popular across the board.
This is Mark Fisher with Mark of the Millennials, and we have with us today Garrick Ross, a millennial.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, Ryan Brady, a millennial. And we have a studio audience at Davy Dust Cigars in Annapolis, Maryland. And of course, we have with us Adam Katora, our producer, and Christopher Hopkins, our assistant producer. And we're here to watch the debate between Joe Biden and, of course, President Donald Trump. So what's going to happen?
What is going to happen? Well, it could go a lot of different ways. I'm quite excited to see what happens. I mean, first and foremost, is it going to be a circus, or are we actually going to get some substantial policy discussion? I think probably the former, but I don't know, Ryan. What do you think?
What do you think, Ryan?
As long as they don't leave this debate depressed, I'm happy.
Ryan's a man. We call Ryan he's the Squirrel Brady. Ryan the Squirrel Brady because sometimes he has squirrel comments. He goes off on
highly
tangents.
random. How about that?
So highly random, but we like that about him because he's a cybersecurity guy. So he's kind of very technical in that area. He kind of loses it. But I expect Joe Biden to come out, and we're saying he's going to do all three debates. I'm surprised he's actually doing one debate. I think what's going to happen is if he does really well in this debate, he's not going to come back for the other two. And if he does really badly in this debate, he's also not going to come back for the other two. I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? So
going back to the basement.
And I think he's going to go after President Trump on COVID because polling shows that the American people, especially suburban women, believe that the President of the United States did not do a good job on COVID. And the President of the United States needs to win suburban women if he's going to win the presidency again.
I really do think the key to this debate, though, is going to be which Joe Biden shows up. Like, is it really like, because look at all the Democratic primary debates. I mean, he never excelled in any of them. He was never stellar. You know, honestly,
for primary, everyone drop it.
The debates never did anything for him. And if Trump can get under his skin, get him really aggravated, and get him to kind of, you know, get off his game, there's a good chance that this will make Biden look like he would be incapable.
So here's
really a fitness test.
So here's what we need to know. I know what I'm going to look for in this debate. What will millennials look for in this debate if they really want to vote for one person or the other?
If you're undecided, I was surprised at this point.
Yeah, but there are millennials that are undecided.
Really, I think it really is going to be a fitness test. Like, who of the two of them, who actually has the mental capacity to be president for 4 more years?
What do you think millennials are looking for with Donald Trump? What do they want to see? If their mind's not made up, what do they want to see?
Talk about economy, securing jobs, getting out of foreign wars, working on it, fixing the infrastructure of America. That was a promise from 4 years ago that hasn't been realized quite yet. But on top of that, though, personally, me, I'm probably not voting for president. I'm just getting down ballot votes.
So I think you said something interesting, though. Jobs is important because while you mentioned, you know, COVID right now.
I got laid off 2 months ago, and I got back in the workforce, thankfully, because of the COVID layoff. So
yeah, so podcast listeners need to know, though, that Ryan actually he's kind of a middle of the road millennial. He's really not left or right. However, if you get into a conversation. But if you have a conversation with Ryan about the Second Amendment, suddenly he becomes pretty far right. But otherwise, he's very wishy-washy.
Of what I want to buy.
Yeah, well, it's true. But not so much Garrick. And Garrick is in law school.
Yeah, it's terrible.
He's learning by Zoom, which means he's not learning.
You make a great argument, Mark.
Yeah, exactly. But I think with this particular debate, Donald Trump needs to show that he's even-keeled. He has to go after Joe Biden on whether Biden has the competency to be president of the United States. And also, I hope Trump goes for the jugular and basically talks about the fact who's really behind Joe Biden. Well, because how can any major party in the United States nominate someone who does not have all of their faculties? And who is really behind him? Who's the puppeteer behind this puppet?
Well, if you remember our few podcasts ago on our podcast channel, we basically did say, what do you think the debate's going to look like? I said, if Trump brings his A game, they may need to get a body bag for Joe Biden. Because from what I've seen on all the conversations, interviews that we've seen for leading up to this debate, Joe Biden has not been really always there, which, you know, might lend to a very subpar performance from the Democrat side. But then again, I don't know. They may have given him something so he brings his A game.
So how many times is Joe Biden going to say, come on, man, when he doesn't know what to say?
Have you seen all the drinking games on Facebook and such? Like,
no, what do they have?
The memes. I mean, they got some good ones. It's like
Everclear shots.
Every time, you know, Biden says corn pop, or every time he says come on, man, or just any of the catchphrases.
So the podcast listeners have to know that we do have these folks here that are in the cigar lounge with us. And in my opinion, they do. And so we're looking forward to hearing some of their comments in the background, which we're going to basically restate. to give you some of the feedback that they're going to give you
in a more acceptable for the internet manner.
Well, yeah, we're gonna keep it pithy, and we're not going to use curse words and things like that because we don't want to be demonetized.
Now that
we've been recently
We try
monetized. And by the way, thank you to all of our podcast listeners because we do a dumbest bill in America every single podcast. At least we try to. And the dumbest bill in America can be from state legislatures. It could also be from the federal government. It could be from city governments. And the thing is, we just did a dumbest bill in America about a month ago that now has 360,000 views on YouTube. And as a result of that, which is huge for us, as a result of that, we've had a huge amount of subscribers to Mark and the Millennials. And something's happening. And that video was called the California Exit Tax, where Rob Bonta, a state senator from California, said that if you have a net worth of $30 million in California, you don't like the way things are going and you want to move out of California, you have to pay taxes for 10 years, even after you leave the state of California. And Rob Bonta was focused on the $5.9 billion it was going to raise. He didn't really care about what it did to the economy in California. And as a result, Californians apparently and people across the country have been watching this, and the video has gone viral. I mean, why do you suppose that particular video, out of all the dumb bills that we do, why did that one go viral?
So I think people really don't like when the government meddles in their financial affairs. I mean, it's as really as simple as that. I mean, money makes the world talk. And when you start screwing with people's money, it's when they get pissed off.
Yeah, but the thing is, you would think that a lot of people would say, oh, but it's $30 million. Hardly anyone has $30 million in net worth. It's about
$30, your job. They pay for your bill. That's your paycheck too.
What do you think? What do you think that went viral?
Because a lot of blue states, we start always saying increase taxes for this, increase taxes for that. It's not making a lot of sense. You're also seeing the middle class being totally gutted because after people like, we talk about Joe Rogan going to Texas, he has the money to do it and take the hit. Whereas middle class people can't really leave, even though the exit tax doesn't hit until you have net worth of $30 million. But then again, median income for a lot of people to be comfortable in like the Pacific Northwest states and California, you have to have upwards of $300,000, which you don't see a lot.
Here's another thing. It starts with $30 million in income. But then, once that doesn't fix the deficit, well, next thing you know, we're talking $10 million. Now we're talking $1 million. Now we're talking just a flat exit tax every time you leave California. I mean,
that's exactly right.
This is we call it the slippery slope, in law and in politics. And it's like, once you start doing something, it quickly falls right off a cliff.
But speaking of Joe Rogan, Spotify signed Joe Rogan for what, $150 million?
Something crazy.
Sweet deal.
And so Joe Rogan is going to move all of his.
He already did.
He moved them to Spotify from YouTube. And so YouTube can no longer see Joe Rogan on YouTube.
Plus, he's doing operations to Texas too.
Yeah.
But my understanding is no sooner did he do that, Joe Rogan, than Spotify started to censor some of the stuff that he's been saying.
A lot of these Spotify employees.
We got some disproven though that it was just the whole catalog took time to upload it. But now there is a strike within the Spotify employees.
Yeah.
Not like
they want control over his production.
So let me get this straight. Spotify employees, I'm sorry, I got to say it. Some of the California snowflakes that Spotify are saying, and millennials, by the way, hate when I say that, but I got to say it. They don't like what Joe Rogan's saying, so they're saying we need to demonetize him.
They want to boycott. They want
control of his production. So
instead of free flowing conversations.
He talks about some really interesting things, interesting guests. I mean, he had a whole guest on the other day I was listening to, and they were talking about Operation Paperclip, and that was after World War II when we brought in all these Nazi scientists. We embedded them in.
That was with Mike Baker, right? The CIA guy?
Yeah. And so, and it was a female author, but I don't remember what her name was. But there's some things that are brought up in there that they're not necessarily known to the general public. What I want to do is at 5 to 10, we can't verify any of that. We shouldn't publish it.
Therefore, it should be just erased.
Just erased. They just want to get rid of it.
So very 1984, very George Orwellian. So the thing that I've learned that millennials hate when there is censorship. And no matter if
depends which ones you talk to.
I was going to say,
Well, but wait a minute. All the millennials that I talk to, even millennials in the middle of the road, they hate censorship.
Oh yeah, you're talking to the right group.
But how do we get the millennials that are in California and the so-called woke millennials to understand that freedom of speech is such an important thing, and that you should be able to say it and say whatever you want to say,
Well,
including things that people don't like.
It's down the slippery slope. You say you can't yell fire in a movie theater because that makes common sense. But then again, it's like you say something I don't agree with or I think is not factual, even though it's up to debate because we may be trying to solve a singular issue, but we have different ways of solving it. And you think your way is the best way, and then my way has no weight to you because your opinion, my opinion doesn't matter.
Because even Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook is blocking a lot of information about COVID that isn't coming from the CDC. So if you restate information and it's not, according to Facebook, acceptable, they're basically blocking information.
There are some weird web pages that get shared on Facebook by people, and it's like, I never heard of that website, and it has a weird domain ending, and it's like, no.
But why is that a problem? I mean, why would we fear what other people say? Why isn't that part of the way you find out what the truth is by reading a lot of different things, including the things that aren't true? Right? That's how you get to the truth.
Part of the issue, though, and I think this just generally stems from what human behavior is now, is that millennials have the memory of a goldfish, right? So we're always looking at I mean, seriously, we look at 10-second sound bites on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all these things, and we just take whatever it says in the caption or whatever said in the video, and then we move right on to the next piece of information. I mean, we're no longer looking at issues in depth, complex ways. We're looking at them as just surface level taglines, and if that tagline fits our biases, heck yeah, that's great stuff. But if not, then we think it's just this harmful and terrible thing that's being circulated.
So if you're watching Mark Millennials, first of all, thank you very much. We are going to comment throughout this debate, so you're going to be able to see the debate and at the same time hear our comments, and you might even hear some of the cigar aficionado comments as well, which we would appreciate. It's always fun to hear them as well. But I really think that this particular debate is going to be the make it or break it debate
The
for
first
this
30
particular
minutes.
election. I do.
First 30 minutes.
I don't think the other two debates are going to matter because
No.
people are already voting.
I already voted.
Yes, which is ridiculous. It should be.
Oh, here we go. Chris Wallace coming on the stage.
There should be a federal law against voting before you actually see the debates, I think. And we have Christopher Wallace, who's not talking. We can't hear anything.
The soundboard guy's not turned up his mic yet.
Yeah, there we go.
Audience here, I'm not sure how.
He looks like he's been mummified a little bit. A little too much makeup, Chris.
I'm interested to see the dynamic between him and Trump, because I know the two of them
don't
are
like
quite
each other.
adversarial, but also I do think that Christopher
He's well-respected
is a
in his
well-respected
craft.
journalist.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but when he interviewed Nancy Pelosi on Fox News, Chris Wallace does, when he's interviewed her a few times, he's always really easy on her. He doesn't really follow up with questions, difficult questions. I almost feel as though Nancy Pelosi tells him you can't ask certain questions.
And I'll never go on your show again.
Then I'll never go on your show again, which is part of the problem. Because obviously CNN and MSNBC are not real networks. I mean, they're not. They're not. I mean, how can millennials, anyone think CNN's a real network?
I mean, I don't watch cable news. I don't even own cable, so
I used
this
to
is the first time I watched Fox in probably a couple months.
I used to watch Fox News, CNN, MSNBC in the morning and evening just to get all the diversity of opinions, but then it was too much. Too much.
You can I think it's awesome because it's gotten to a point where I can turn them on and I know what they're about to say for the next 5 minutes.
Like CNN was still looking for that down airplane for almost a year.
The other thing I don't like about debates is the fact that you have people in the audience, and I think even though you need people in the audience during the debate itself, when they start clapping, it just seems a little fake.
Karl Rove.
Yeah, Karl Rove, who got it completely wrong when John McCain was running. He actually thought the night of the election that Mitt Romney.
Right.
Remember, he actually thought, Mitt Romney still has a chance. No, Mitt Romney he had no chance. He had no personality either. no personality whatsoever.
Hey, he came up clutch for the.
And there's Kimberly Guilfoyle. Yeah, there we go. I just want podcast listeners to know that the cigar bar came alive when they saw Ivana Trump, Ivanka Trump, and they didn't care about Mark Millennials, but comes on and they'll get excited. That's right. The peanut gallery is quite live.
That's good.
So what's the first question? What do you think the first question is going to be? I think it's going to be about the pandemic. It's got to be
COVID.
Yeah.
That's the number one issue right now.
No, the first question should be, Joe, how many people have died from the pandemic? 200 million people. I'm sure that's what he's going to say. But I also think that they're going to really hit Trump hard in the pandemic, because what we've seen, as I said earlier, is the polling on the pandemic and the economy in particular is Trump really, they're saying he didn't care, he didn't do enough. Meanwhile, he has a travel ban that he put into place, and Nancy Pelosi went to Chinatown after the travel ban, right before the travel ban.
For promote tourism, right?
And then she told everybody, come on down to Chinatown, it's perfectly safe, because she thought Trump was being a racist by calling it the Chinese virus, right?
Yeah.
Remember that reporter? She says, why are you calling it the Chinese virus? She says, because it comes from China. China.
In that Trump voice.
I'm sorry. That was one of the funniest reporting mistakes I've ever seen in my life, when they're asking a stupid question like that. And they also asked him about hydroxychloroquine. That lasted for a month. Why do you think we should try hydroxychloroquine? Because when you think there's a chance that you're going to die, and the chance is, 100%, it's worth trying anything. That's why he passed the Right to Try Act. So you'd actually have the right to try things when you're terminal. I mean, doesn't that make sense to you?
You got to fight the war with the weapons.
And now we have the debate. It's 9:01. I guess it's actually technically going to start 9:05. Is that when they finally come out and they start talking?
Whenever they can find Joe.
Whenever they can find Joe.
Entering this corner of the ring.
Joe's wandering in the street right now.
Joe's getting mic'd up.
He's
getting wound up.
Yeah. Joe's getting his earpiece in, and that's what they're saying in the peanut gallery here. And he's getting a shot of adrenaline so that he can actually, stand up. And they have a Joe double and the weekend at Bernie's, the weekend at Bernie's double.
I'll be at the Oval Office if he wins presidency. It'll be Kamala Harris's presidency if that happens.
Oh yeah, right away.
Oh,
I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, she won't even live in the vice president's mansion.
Mr. President, I can handle this issue for you. No worries. I'll make this policy decision. Okay,
that's exactly right.
The other day, she was like, under a Harris administration. I was like, oh, they're just coming right out with it now.
So they're going to go, for 15 minutes at a time, and then they're going to just go a break? Yeah, it's like a segments of 15 minutes, because Joe can't last longer than 15 minutes.
What I'm actually looking forward to is usually with these debates, they have the polling, saying what someone's comments trend with conservatives or liberals, and it's okay, where does it all lean? Or
I like
rating.
that too.
It's really cool where
it's the dial.
They do the live.
But now they have the QR code.
Yeah.
Now there's the QR code.
Oh, so you can do it with the app. Okay,
so it's going to be more accurate, I think.
There we go.
At least that's what they think. So there was a very lonely Chris Wallace sitting on stage, getting ready to ask the questions. I'm just wondering how often Trump is going to interrupt and how often Biden is going to interrupt. And it's probably going to be Trump, I think, that interrupts the most.
No, you see, I was listening to CNN on my way here.
You're listening.
Hold on. Hey,
I was trying to get the lowdown. All right, but anyway, so John.
I thought you said you didn't have cable.
On the radio.
Oh, okay.
It takes me an hour to get here, Mark, so I have time to kill. And then somebody made a good point. It was if you think back to the 2016 Republican primary debates, and even the debates with Hillary Clinton, for as much as Trump is capable of being provocative, he was actually very measured.
Hey, Chris, you're on the air. Just so you know, Chris.
One moment.
Oh, okay. Chris is giving Biden all the questions first.
From the health education campus of Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic. I'm Chris Wallace of Fox News, and I welcome you to the first of the 2020 presidential debates between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. This debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The commission has designed the format, 6 roughly 15-minute segments with 2-minute answers from each candidate to the first question, then open discussion for the rest of each segment. Both campaigns have agreed to these rules. For the record, I decided the topics and the questions in each topic. I can assure you, none of the questions has been shared with the commission or the two candidates. This debate is being conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Cleveland Clinic, which is serving as the health security advisor to the commission for all 4 debates. As a precaution, both campaigns have agreed the candidates will not shake hands at the beginning of tonight's debate.
What's going on?
The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, no boos or other interruptions, so we, and more importantly you, can focus on what the candidates have to say. No noise except right now, as we welcome the Republican nominee, President Trump, and the Democratic nominee, Vice President Biden.
Hey, you got a haircut.
He was looking freshly bronzed.
Freshly bronzed.
Wait, he came out already?
He got a spray tan.
Wait.
Where's the elbow bump?
And Joe has the head.
People have been waiting for this night, so let's get going.
The crew
Our
here
first
in the
subject is
Davidoff Cigar
Supreme
said it's
Court.
nice to be here in Scranton.
President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend
great call from over there.
to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the president and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight: why are you right in the argument you make and your opponent wrong? And where do you think a Justice Barrett would take the court?
And will you stack
President
the court?
Trump, in this first segment, you go first.
That's the question.
Move it to 11
Very much,
justices.
Chris. I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have
Yes,
the Senate,
indeed.
we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all, top academic, good in every way, good in every way. In fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time. Even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as you know.
And Joe wants to
So I
nominate
think
Ruth Bader
that
Ginsburg.
she will be outstanding. She's going to be as good as anybody that has served on that board. I really feel that we have a professor at Notre Dame, highly respected by all, such as the single greatest student he's ever had. He's been a professor for a long time at a great school. And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her, and very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is they try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they
also in
didn't
the
have the
Constitution
election,
of the
so
United States.
they were
didn't have the
stopped.
Senate.
And probably that would happen in reverse also,
Doesn't say the
definitely
president
would
may, it
happen
says
in
the
reverse.
president shall.
So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
President Trump, thank you. Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this, and looking forward to this, Mr. President. The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is, and that say occurs when they vote for a United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should
dead
wait and
people
see
in
what
New
the
York City.
outcome of this election is, because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that, he ran on that, and
He's
he's
deflecting.
been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now
argument.
trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. And the justice, and I have nothing, I'm not opposed to the justice. She seems like a very fine person. But she's written before she went on the
His
bench, which is
supporters
her
aren't
right,
like that.
that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing that's on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed.
Exactly.
Once again, a woman could be held, pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They were able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets. And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act. And there's 100 million people who have pre-existing conditions, and they'll be taken away as well.
Yeah, and you also
Those
got rid of
pre-existing
filibuster,
conditions,
which is why we
insurance
can
companies are
nominate
gonna
a
love
Supreme
this.
Court justice
And
without
so
60
it's just
votes.
not
Well, he's trying to
appropriate
incite fear
to do this
about saying
before
they're gonna
this
lose the ACA
election.
and all that
If
stuff
he
and
wins
pre-existing-
the
he's just trying
election
to get the votes
and the
through fear
Senate
right
is
now.
Democrat or Republican, then he goes forward. If not, we should wait until February.
There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as the say is concerned, the people already had their say. Okay, Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. So we have the Senate, we have a president.
He's elected to the next
During
election.
that period of time,
He's elected to the next election?
I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years.
The
And the
election's
100
already
million
started.
people.
They don't think that he was elected to begin with. That's the
It's
problem.
totally wrong. I don't know where you got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very
That's
happy
simply
with.
not true.
Well, you're certainly
No,
going to
let's-
socialist. You're going to
This
socialist.
is-
said it on
we're now
stage
into-
for the Democrat
John, We're now
debate.
into open discussion.
Open discussion.
Open discussion. Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Vice President.
Number one,
Robert Rules.
he knows that what I proposed. What I proposed is that
Problem is, you don't
we
know what you
expand
proposed.
Obamacare and we increase it. We do not wipe any. And
This
one of the
think
big
tank-
Wait a minute, I have to
problems
listen to my
we had with
earpiece.
23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
That's what
What you
Obama
said,
said too. If you want your
that
insurance,
is
insurance, your
simply-
health care, you
doesn't say
keep your
your
health care,
party
you
wants
keep
to
your
go
doctor.
socialist.
Wasn't true.
My
medicine
party is
and
me.
socialist
Right
health
now,
policy.
I am.
And they're going to
the
dominate
Democratic
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the
Not according
Democratic
to
Party
Harris.
is what I, in fact, approved
Starting to
of.
sound
What
like
I
Andrew
approved of.
Harris.
Now, here's the deal.
I am the party.
The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And
Take
by
a
the
shot
way,
at home, everybody.
the 200 million, the 200,000 people that.
Oh, no.
Well, there's 7 million people that contract.
Barely
What
saved
does it
that.
mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act? And
Joe,
So,
you've had 308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military. So don't tell me.
Oh, there we
Hit him on the VA
go.
issue.
You forgot the veterans, Joe.
It would be 2 million people because you were very late.
And we
in
only
the
have
draw.
130 million
You
people left in the
had
US because
China,
200 million
which was
apparently
heavily
died from COVID.
infected. You
According to
didn't want
Joe
to ban
All right, gentlemen,
which
no,
was
Mr.
heavily-
President,
You would have
Mr.
been much
President,
later, Joe.
Mr. President,
Much later.
Mr.
We're talking
President,
about 2 million people.
You're not gonna be able to
President, as
shut
a
him.
moderator, we are going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but go ahead.
Let me finish. The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court,
Actually ever said that?
And so that's
I honestly
also
don't think
stopped.
Roe v. Wade's up.
And so the election is all.
You don't
They're
know
making that
You
into
know
it's
what Barrett on
an
the
issue
board,
that
I
wasn't
don't
going to be brought up now. They're making it
Because-
an issue because they know
Why
they
isn't
can
it?
vote.
It's not on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the.
The only thing that's on the ballot
court.
is,
Oh, they're making, oh,
is
Nothing
post-birth
happening there.
abortion. That's
Donald,
what the
you don't
Democrats
know
want. That's what's on the
her
ballot for them because they
view
want it.
on Roe v. Wade.
I
You
don't
her
know.
view.
Well, all right, let's talk.
That's actually really well done.
We got a lot to
I think he's
unpack
spot
here,
on there.
gentlemen. We got a lot of time.
It really is. You don't know what her views are. You
On
can't, you can't
healthcare.
come out and say
And
she's
then
going to
we'll
just
come
turn
back.
around.
Before we went
All
live,
right,
though, it's actually nice not
Mr.
having the
President,
audience
the
clap,
Supreme Court
and
will
we're actually getting
hear
more substance now.
A case
Yeah.
a week
very
after
true.
the
And they
election.
can't hide behind the
in
clap.
which
See,
the
look, they
Trump
agree with me.
administration, along with 18 state attorneys general,
But he did say that
are
200
seeking
million.
to
That's
overturn
That's right.
Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last.
Because they want to give good health
If
care.
I may ask my question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan
Yes,
to
I have.
replace
Well, he died in
Obamacare.
the
Yes, I
Senate.
have.
Well, I'll
I
give
got
you an
rid of the
opportunity. When I
individual
finish, I'm going to
mandate.
give you an
Excuse me,
opportunity.
I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a
That is
big
not a
chunk of
comprehensive
Obamacare. That
plan.
is absolutely a big thing. That was the worst
I
part of
didn't ask,
Obamacare.
sir.
Chris,
You're
that was the
debating
worst
him.
Where's Candy
part of
Crowley
Obamacare.
when you need her?
Well,
So she can be the
I'll
fact
ask Joe.
checker, you know?
The
know.
individual mandate was the most unpopular
Mr. Vice
aspect of
Mr.
Obamacare. I got
President,
rid of it.
I'd like you
And we
to-
will protect
Mr.
people with
President, I'm the
pre-existing
moderator of this
conditions.
debate, and I would like.
No, apparently you're debating him,
my
Chris.
question, and then you
Well,
can
he's trying to
answer.
get the question out.
You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace
Starting to count the
Obamacare.
lights.
And
Joe needs to
just
change the
this
Depends.
last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump healthcare plan?
Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's.
Oh.
okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
Thank
tell
you.
something that
See, I
there's
see it the
nothing
same way.
symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against big pharma. drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it.
Oh, there we
So
go.
we're cutting
Hitting
healthcare.
Biden on
All of the
47
things
years
that
of
we've
nothing.
done,
He has not
insulin.
cut
I'll give you an example. Insulin.
Well, he has a large
It's
enough
one of the
record to
big
go
things destroying
deep diving
families,
into, for
destroying
sure.
people. The
Find
cost.
some weaknesses.
I'm getting it for so cheap. It's like water.
And Big
if you wanna
Pharma is
know the
behind
truth.
Biden.
So
There's
cheap.
no doubt about
Take a
it.
look at all of the drugs that what we're doing, prescription
That's why
drug
Big Pharma
prices.
was behind
We're gonna allow our
Obamacare, because
governors
they
now to go to
benefited so
other
much.
countries to buy drugs because
When in
they
fact-
pay just a tiny
As I
fraction.
say, this is open discussion.
No,
Let me
but
ask
this
you
is
about,
big-
let me,
this
you'll
is
be
big
happy,
stuff.
sir. You'll be happy.
This is devolving.
I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the vice president, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare. And
Yes.
the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that that is
Obamacare is
going to
nothing but a
end
public
private
option.
insurance.
It is
And
not.
well, if I can ask you the question, it will
Not what your
end.
party says, by the way.
It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health care.
It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid. They can get that free in most states, except governors who want to deny people who are poor Medicaid. Anyone who qualifies for Medicare would, Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American
Quick,
people
call the doctor.
still
Needs a shot in the
not
ass to get him
be
going.
in that option. Number one.
Joe, you
Number
agreed
two.
with Bernie
Number-
Sanders,
I-
who's
I-
far left, on the manifesto,
Well,
we call it.
well,
That
manifesto-
gives you socialized medicine.
Look, hey, I'm
you saying
not
you
going to
didn't
listen to
agree?
him. The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie
I'm not
Sanders.
listening
Oh, he's-
to him.
He's trying to take the high road right now on that one.
I'm here standing facing you, old buddy.
Pocahontas would have left.
Oh my God!
What did he say? I missed that. What did he say?
He brought up Elizabeth Warren, called her Pocahontas.
Tonight as well. And tonight I'm going to make sure, because here's the deal. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
Okay.
I just
agreed.
want to make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
You ordered last in your class first. And
I-
you picked
The wrong guy, the wrong night at the wrong time.
Listen, you agreed with
Here's the
Bernie
deal.
Sanders to the
The
manifesto.
whole idea,
Let him,
there is no manifesto, number
please let
one.
him speak, Mr.
Number two.
Yeah, it's called the Communist Manifesto. That's what
Number two.
Democrats are following right now.
You just lost the left. You agreed with Bernie Sanders on a plan.
Folks,
Absolutely agreed
folks, do you
to.
have any
Under that
idea
thing
what
of
this-
I'm waiting for him to say that's a bunch of malarkey.
do you have any idea?
Socialized medicine.
You can see him saying
Tell you
that.
what, he is not for any help for people needing health care. Because he in fact already has cost 10 million people their health care that they have from employers because of his recession. Number one. Number two, there are
Because of his
20 million
recession,
people
yeah.
getting health care through Obamacare
This recession
now.
that you
If he
caused
wants
by
to take it
exporting
away,
jobs to
he
China.
won't ever look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away.
No, I want to give you
Number
better
three.
health care at a much lower price.
This is simply trying to get votes through people's fears of losing health insurance. This is insane.
It's the same old thing that Democrats do.
He has
Here's a shiny toy. You're going to get it. You're not going to get it. They don't care. You
You're
live-
gonna throw Obama off the cliff.
Joe Biden's in the 1%. He doesn't care.
It really would be a public. It would
Obamacare
really take
is
over.
no good. We made it
He just
better.
wants the votes and
I
be
had a choice
president.
to
That's all he
make right
wants. He
or
doesn't.
wrong.
I don't
We
think he
took
honestly
away the
cares about
individual
people, everyday
mandate.
people.
We guarantee pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is. And that destroyed, that, they shouldn't even
And
call
the
it
individual
Obamacare.
mandate
Then I had
was
a
taken
choice
away,
to
so
make.
that
Do I
way-
let my people run it
So you
really well?
Choose.
You wouldn't be fine. Yeah,
If I
you
run
wouldn't
it
be fine for not
badly,
having
they'll
health
probably
insurance.
blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people. Okay? I said, you got to run it so well.
That's what
And I just had a meeting with them. They said, the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive,
I got you.
premiums
I
are
got
too
it.
high, and
That's
it doesn't
what
work.
his- that's
So
what his people-
we.
And so are
we do want to
deductibles.
get rid of it.
Deductibles are
Chris,
so
no,
high
I
under
understand
Obamacare, you
that
really
somebody
have no
has
insurance
to
anyway.
It only works if you have a lot of people in it to reduce the deductibles and the premiums.
He has no plan for health care.
Of course we do.
He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered
Wait.
drug costs for
This is coming
anybody.
from the
He's been
executive
promising
order
a healthcare
presidency.
plan
Yeah,
since he got
exactly.
elected. He has none.
Yeah,
Like
I have a
almost
pen and a
everything
phone.
else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan.
And you
the
don't have a
fact
brain
is
like
this
the-
man doesn't
like the
know what he's
Scarecrow in
talking
Wizard of
about.
Oz.
All right,
He's
I have
against
one final question for you.
In all honesty, I don't know if both of them
Vice
have plans.
President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett There has been talk about ending the filibuster.
Finally.
Or even packing the
question we
court,
want to know.
adding to the 9 justices
Yeah.
there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact, it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues.
Exactly.
They want to stack the
So my
court.
question to you
Wasn't the
is, you have
squad
refused
pushing
in
that
the
one
past
for a long
FDR.
time?
Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or
Ooh,
packing
good
the
question.
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The
Oh,
issue
don't
is
dodge.
the American people should speak.
Make a statement.
You should go out and vote.
Oh, come on.
Oh,
Let your
Yeah,
senators
Joe's saying, go out and vote, and then I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I don't want
Sure,
you.
you in fact let
Yeah.
people
Don't pack the court. Don't pack the court.
First I have to win, then I'm going to tell you.
The question is,
Nine's enough.
Justice, radical left.
would you
Who is
shut
your,
up, man?
listen, who is on your list, Joe?
This
Who's
is
on your
so,
list?
Gentlemen, I think
this
we've
is
ended
so
this.
He's going to pack the court.
We have ended,
Oh,
we have ended this segment.
hitting
We're gonna
Trump on
move
the
to
eloquence
second
part.
segment.
that was really a productive segment, wasn't
Yeah, because you didn't answer the question.
The people understand, Joe.
it? They should.
47 years you've done nothing. They understand.
Oh, that's a big win for Donald Trump right there.
I just enjoy these one-hitters. This is comedic gold right now,
We have
unfortunately.
had
Well, actually, fortunately and unfortunately.
7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, and more than 200,000 people have died. Even after we produce a vaccine, experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything approaching normal.
As long as I get my
question
roaring
for
20s, I'm
both of you
happy.
is, based on what you have said and done so far, and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward? In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck. 200,000
I
dead.
had to wake up.
As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States. We, in fact, have 5%, 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths.
He's reading.
40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, what did he do? He went in and we were insisting that the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us.
Eric said, "Who's she?"
He then
It's
did
Winnie the
nothing.
Pooh.
He
Yeah,
waited
Winnie the
and
Pooh.
waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan. I laid out
Sir,
back in
it's
March
Yeah, 2
exactly
minutes are
what
up,
we
Joe.
should be
It kind of
doing.
seems like
And
Joe
I
Biden's
laid out
taking some of the
again
words
in
that President Trump
July
has said a little bit
what
out
we
of
should be doing.
context.
We should be
Because he's saying
providing
it is
all
what it is. That's the
protective
data
care
he's
costs.
running
We
off
should be
of. Then you have to
providing
think
the
of a
money
plan to
the
actually
House
do
has
it.
passed in
And
order
also,
to be
having
able
those
to go out
investigators go
and
into
get
Wuhan, I
people
don't think
the
how
help
effective they
need
would have
to
been
keep their
anyway.
businesses
You could
open.
already see how it
Open
was wreaking
schools that
havoc
cost
in
a lot
China
of money.
anyway. So it's
You
a
should
pretty
get out
deadly
of your
virus.
bunker and get out of the sand trap
take a
and
rocket
get
scientist.
in your golf course and go in the
He just
Oval
said
Office
he wants Trump to get out of the bunker.
and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So if we would have listened
Wait,
to
you
you,
have 2 minutes, sir.
if we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000. And one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They
'Cause
don't
they
exactly
fake the
give you a
numbers.
straight count, just so you understand.
Also, it's probably
If you
I thought it was
classified
really true.
information. They don't want to publicly know about it.
Yeah,
Because they also have
China-
intelligence
he's a
resources.
racist,
Yeah, you
he's
think China's going to
xenophobic.
come out and
Communist
publicize how many
countries
people-
always lie.
Wait a minute.
It's 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said,
I wish we did in
President Trump
January, but that
saved
doesn't really help the
thousands of
issue.
lives. Many of your Democrat governors said, President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governor said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did. We got the gowns. We got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine.
No, he was too busy exporting all those manufacturing industries to China.
People are dying.
He and his buddy Hunter.
Which was insane. Everyone's like, oh my God, why can't we get all this PPE? It's like, our supply chains all moved over to China. It's like, oh, our industry's not in America anymore. Oh, well, what?
Under Biden and Obama's watch.
They give me bad press because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
Ooh.
I know how to get the job. I know how to get the job.
Well, you didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was no economic recession.
Sir, you made a
There was no recession.
You made a point. Let him answer.
And there was we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you
So Joe wants it both ways. Don't shut down the economy, but save more lives.
Someone died of COVID. How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak to them? You had a nurse holding a phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far more people. Far more people.
And
you would have been.
And by the way, his own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up. He said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine,
we all have our masks.
For a vaccine, I don't trust him at all. Nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You don't
we
trust
Dr.
Fauci. Johnson, Pfizer.
And by the way,
gentlemen, let me move on to
classic Trumpian move, the shoulders and the hand.
Focusing on the future, President Trump, you have repeatedly either contradicted or been at odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your two words.
Yeah.
But Dr. Slaoui, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives. It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer. I've spoken to all the people that we have to speak to. We have Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. Become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call it the left.
He's looking up like, where am I? Look at it. He's looking at his people for help.
With him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available.
Just like he said, it's a possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also be after that.
Generally available.
Well, we're going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up logistically. They're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day.
Healthcare workers need the vaccine first.
Yep.
Military.
By Easter,
Also,
this would be gone
First
away.
responders,
By the
first
warm
responders,
weather,
maybe
it'd
more
be
at-risk
gone.
communities or at-risk
Like a
demographics.
miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it.
Okay.
This is the
That was
same
said
man.
sarcastic.
You went deep for that one.
That was said sarcastic.
And so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice
As
President,
human beings need hope, Joe.
I want to pick up on this question, though. You say
This
the
is where
public,
President
They need
Trump,
hope. They need to know there's a possibility, there's a cure.
this is one with President Trump. He was a little bit more eloquent and
Your running
actually,
mate, Senator Harris,
spoken
goes
out
further,
that sentence
saying the
a little
public
better.
health experts, quote,
If he articulated
Yeah,
better.
he would have been,
will
that's
be
going to be a weak
suppressed.
point because he
Given
does
the
that,
fact
he gets in
that
trouble. He's trying to say a
already
message and then he
that
doesn't say it right.
people
And
are
then
doesn't follow
concerned
through.
about the
Yeah, and then
vaccine
it's like,
and
what do you mean?
reluctant to
And
take it.
cause confusion.
Are you
I agree.
and your running
I
mate,
agree
Senator
completely.
Harris, contributing to that
He's
fear?
shooting off his
No
own
more
foot.
than the question
Absolutely.
you just asked him. You pointed out He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying
Everybody
you can't,
knows.
Senator
Yeah,
Harris
because
is
you're
saying
supposed to
can't
do
trust the
that.
science.
Well, no, you can trust the science.
You're supposed to get different.
She didn't say that.
You're
You
supposed to
can't
get
trust
different
the science.
opinions
Yep.
Public
on
health
really
experts,
important
quote,
issues,
will be
and then pick and
muzzled,
choose
will
the
be
opinions that make
Well,
the most
then
sense.
that's
what
Most
he's gonna try
presidents
to
have
do, but
a
there's
number of
brain
people,
trust, the brain trust.
and they disagree, and then
Yep.
you come
like
to a
here at this great
consensus.
Yep.
hospital
And
that
unfortunately,
don't
with President Trump,
work
that's
for
one
him.
weakness we hit
Their
on.
job doesn't
He's not
depend on
articulate
him.
enough to actually
That's not-
follow through
they're the
with
people
a lot of that
and by the way,
sentence structure of those
that are in
topics where
charge.
then
They will have the
the mainstream
vicarious.
media hops on it and then
But you
makes it a story
believe
for
for a
2 or 3
moment
weeks.
what he's telling you in light of
If
all
the shoe was
the
on the
lies
floor, if
he's
this
told
was
you
a Democrat
about
president
the whole
going against
issue
a
relating to
Republican
COVID. He
presidential
still
candidate,
hasn't even
it would be
acknowledged
totally different.
that he knew
As in
this
the
was
questions being
happening,
asked
knew
or
how
the kind of
dangerous it would
almost
be
the
back in
constant attacks.
February, and he didn't even tell you. He's on record as saying it. He panicked or he just looked at the stock market, one of the two, because guess what? A lot of people die.
I don't
And a
think
lot
Joe
more
Biden
gonna
would have done
die
the
unless
same
he
damn
gets a
thing in
lot
February,
smarter,
to be
a lot
honest.
quicker.
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. Either the lowest or
Go Blue
almost
Hens,
the
right?
lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that.
Oh, what's going on here?
You, Joe. 47 years you've done nothing.
Let's have this debate.
And if you would have had, let me just tell you something, Joe.
No,
If you would have had the charge of what I was put through, I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way,
We were
now it's
booming,
being
that's
built
for sure.
again.
See,
And
We're
it's
going to
going
get
up
to the
fast.
economy in the next segment, sir.
okay.
It's going up fast.
Okay.
Look forward to talking.
When it comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the
I
two
think
of
Donald
you
Trump
have
just
taken very
slayed
different approaches,
Joe
and this is
Biden
going
right
to
there.
affect how the
Joe
virus
talking
is
smart.
handled going forward by whichever of you ends up becoming the next president. I want to quickly go through several of those. Reopenings. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools.
You gotta
Why, sir?
reopen.
Because he doesn't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses
Gotta
the
reopen the
ability to have
economy,
the
as
money
Derek
to be
just
able to
said.
reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need.
Last
You
time I
have to
checked, we're
provide
still in the
that
red,
message.
we're on the black with our national deficit.
Well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to Nancy Pelosi and Schumer.
by
He's
the
got a
way,
point. I mean, they're
Nancy
holding up the
Pelosi
next
and
round of
Schumer,
corona relief.
They have a plan.
Well, yeah, because they're
He
not
won't even
compromising.
meet with them.
Exactly.
The
A lot of riders
Republicans
on
won't
that bill,
meet
too.
with
They
them
don't
in
make
the
any
Senate.
sense for a
He
stimulus
sits,
package
he
during
sits on
COVID.
his golf course. And
Nancy
literally
Pelosi's
think
plan
about
was
it.
to impeach him and remove him.
That didn't work well. Well, they got
What about
what?
this question
Shift
of
on there, Adam
reopenings
Schiff.
and the
He did a
He
horrible
wants
job
to
during
shut
that.
down.
That was her only plan.
Oh.
And I want to keep it open. And we
You
did a
get-
great
he
thing
gets
by
it.
No, that's
shutting
easy.
it
Shut
down.
it
Wait a
down.
minute, Joe. Let me shut you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second. He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different
Exactly.
problems are
Exactly.
very, very vulnerable. We learned
we know
a
what the
lot.
reason
Young
is.
children aren't.
And now we're opening back
Even
up.
Younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election.
Oh, yeah.
November 3rd.
That's exactly right. They want it to be shut down until after the election. So they can have, they can stuff the ballot box with ballot harvesting.
President Trump,
And phony ballots.
begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have
This
cited
is a gotcha
the
question.
issue of
I know where this is
waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
No, I think
the
masks are
efficacy of
okay. You have to
masks?
understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to, but I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from me. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen.
Look,
It's
the way
all
to open
phony.
Businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open. We provided money. The
But
Congress.
I was asking you, sir, about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, everybody wore masks and social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also
It
said the
matters.
opposite. They've also
And
said
no serious person said the opposite.
they've
No
also said, well, look,
serious.
all right, I want
Dr.
to ask you. Dr. Fauci said
He
the
did
opposite.
I
not
want
say
to ask
the
you, we got a
Said
little
very
bit more than a
strongly,
minute left in this
masks
segment.
are not good. Then he changed his mind. He said masks are good.
I want
I
Yeah,
feel bad
that's
for
part of the
Chris
problem.
Wallace right now. This is tough to
subject
moderate
because
this.
your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people.
Outside.
Outside, yes, sir. Agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller
Has he even held a rally?
events with
Because nobody will show up.
people with. In any case, why you?
No one comes to Biden rallies,
Why
so.
you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
But are you
I've
not
done a
worried
great
about it
job as a
spreading disease?
president, and I'll have 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you
for
not worried
hangars.
about
We
the
have a
disease
lot of
issues,
people.
sir?
Well, so far, we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference according to the experts. And we do them outside. We have tremendous crowds, as you see.
So
I mean,
basically, if you
and literally
podcast
24
listeners, here's the
hours
thing.
notice.
Biden
And Joe
doesn't
does the
want
circles
Trump
and
to
has three
campaign.
people
If Trump
someplace.
campaigns,
By
he
the way,
wins.
did you see one of the last?
Also,
rallies
Biden doesn't
he
want
had,
there to be a
and a
campaign.
reporter
He
came
has
up
to
to
do
him to
things.
ask
I
him
mean,
a
he's
question.
been
He said,
just
"No, no,
sitting
no.
in the basement. I mean, he's put a
Stand
lid
back.
on his
Put on
campaign
your
14
mask.
of the last,
Put on a
like,
mask. Have you been
14 days in the
tested?
last month. He hasn't been out, hasn't been in public,
I'm
hasn't
way
fielded
far away from
questions.
those other people. That's what he said.
Because you're so virtuous,
Joe.
Joe. You're a
He's not
typical
worried about
virtuous
you.
Democrat.
He's not worried about the people out there breathing on one
We've
another.
had no negative.
Yeah, Joe's so far away from all five
We've had
people.
no
They
negative.
come to his rallies.
We've had 35, 40,000
All right,
people
you wanna-
at these rallies.
Just
Yes.
quickly finish up because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing and people wearing
It almost
masks.
sounded like he said
Basically
Wuhan
encourage them not
virus for a
to.
hot second.
All right.
He
Then
caught
he's a fool
himself.
on that.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing, but you can't.
There it is.
Can we move on?
Oh, slam dunk.
There's going to be a
Slam
really
dunk.
interesting
Recovering
SNL skit
faster
coming
than
our way
expected
soon.
from the shutdown.
Much faster.
In the second quarter, the unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice
try
President
owning a
Biden, you
restaurant
say
and tell
it's
that to
more of
them.
a K-shape.
A lot of restaurants are
What
closed,
difference
unfortunately.
does that mean to the American people
I think
in
Trump's
terms
got
of
to
the
own the
economy?
K-shape
President
and
Trump
say,
in
you know,
this
we got to do more
segment, you
for
go first.
restaurants. We got to do more for
So we built the
hospitality.
greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was very hard psychologically to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong. And again, 2 million people will be dead now instead of still 204,000 people.
That's very
It's
true.
too much. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down,
True.
and now we're reopening.
Yes, the
And we're
restaurants
doing
are
record
closing. They always
business.
close,
We
of
had
course,
10
opening and
volatile
close.
million
industry,
people
yeah.
in a 4-month
Well,
period.
thin margins,
It's
too.
hard to stay
Back in
open
the
when you
workforce.
have to open
That's
at
a
50%
record, the likes of
capacity.
which nobody's ever seen before. And
Where
he wants to
every single
close down.
table
He
is
will shut it down
your
again.
livelihood.
He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening in some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do.
That
They
is
can
so well
social
said.
distance. They can
If
wash
you really
their
care
hands,
about
they can wear
people,
masks,
you would
they
open
can
up
do
the
whatever they
economy.
want.
Well, you
But
can
they
look
gotta
at the-
open these
Because people are
sites.
dying from
When you
opioid
look at
abuse,
North
depression.
Carolina, when you look at these governors are under
Yes,
siege.
let people make their own
Pennsylvania,
decisions.
People have to be able to
Michigan,
support
and a
Well,
couple of
Speaker
others.
They have
Pelosi
to.
opened
You
up
gotta
that
open these
salon
states up.
when the
It's
salon
not
couldn't
fair.
operate
You're
to get her
talking
hair
about
done.
almost it's like being in
Yes.
prison.
Even
And you
Nancy's
look
getting a
what's
perm.
going on with
Yeah,
divorce.
yeah.
Look at what's
It was
going
a
on
setup.
with alcoholism
And-
and drugs.
and she's
It's a
sorry she
very,
fell
very
for it.
sad thing.
Yeah, she
And
fell
he'll
for the
close
setup.
down the whole country. This guy
Good
will
old
close
Nancy.
down the whole country and
She's
destroy
so worried
our
about
country.
it. As
Our
someone who's
country is
over 80
coming
years
back
old, she didn't wear a
incredibly
mask
well,
indoors.
setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody
Sure
to
makes,
come in and say, "You shut it down."
sure makes you wonder.
Your 2 minutes, sir. In the question, President says it's a V-shaped recovery, you say it's a K-shaped recovery. What's the difference?
The difference is billionaires and billionaires
That's not
like
graph
him,
work.
the little COVID crisis.
Here we go.
Very well.
Here we go.
Another billionaires
We're
who
playing
really
the
had
game.
made
Democrat
another
game of
A little.
people who are successful are bad.
Here's the thing: there's one
Same old
industry
game,
where
Democrat.
where unemployment has particularly
folks
been a
at home,
factor. One industry
You
that has
folks living
been
in
adversely
Scranton
affected by
claiming
it.
that
For
all
the
the
most part,
small towns and working
every
class
other
towns in
business
America.
is still
How will
working,
you
still
do it?
The
producing.
classic
This guy
proletariat
paid
versus
total
bourgeoisie
$750 in
Yeah.
taxes.
Sir, wait, no, sir, it's just, yeah, I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president.
That
Fewer
really his
jobs
fault?
than when he
I mean, you
became
can be
president.
critical of
First
him all
one
you
in
want,
American
but is that really
history.
his fault?
Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who've been putting themselves.
Well, when you
in a
die,
way
you
to
usually
make
lose your
sure
job, Joe.
that we
I'm just
all
saying.
try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix
So
the
that people
economy
can get back to
until
work
you
and live
fix
their
the COVID
lives.
crisis. And he has
Human
no
beings are not
intention of doing anything
hardwired
about
to
making
do
it better
nothing.
for you all at
imagine
home.
We're wired
in
to
terms
build,
of your
to
health and your
grow,
safety.
and to interact.
Why aren't schools open?
Which is
Because it costs a lot of money to open
yeah,
schools.
Democrats are hardwired
They
to
were
do
going to
nothing.
Can you imagine going back to a lockdown during winter when people have the seasonal affective disorder with depression,
because it's not a
depressed because of
national
lockdown?
emergency.
Especially in the
Not
winter.
a
Just
national
can't go through another
emergency.
lockdown.
They've
I
done
mean, we already got
nothing
out
to
of
help
one,
small
and you want to go back
businesses.
into another one?
Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the
And yeah, but
job.
he-
so he
and take
just
care of the needs of the
contradicted
American
himself.
people, so we can.
He's concerned about small businesses, but he said the president should close
I
everything.
have to respond to that.
Well, you both
In
have
the end,
2
we just got to
minutes,
do
sir.
what's right. for the
Excuse me, you
country.
made a statement.
Hopefully.
So did you.
People want their schools,
rather
no, people want their schools open. They don't want to be
Amen to
shut
that.
down. They don't want
Some
their
schools are
state
doing it
shut
right.
down. They want their
They have
restaurants.
the
I look at
procedures
New York,
already.
It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not sure it can ever recover what they've done in New York. People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives.
People
They'll
want
be
to be
careful,
safe.
but they want their schools open.
People want
I'm the
to be
one that
safe.
brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy
Honestly,
to do it.
that's a bigger
And
deal than
people
Joe
of
thinks it
Ohio
is.
are very proud of me.
A lot of people are happy with that
So
one.
that is a big deal, especially in
That is a huge
states
deal.
like Michigan and Wisconsin.
Going forward in a moment, but
And
first, Mr.
Pennsylvania.
President,
And Ohio.
as you
And
heard,
Ohio.
there's a new report that in 2016,
And Joe's laughing at
you
that.
were
He
elected
literally,
president.
that is a
in
mistake. He should
2017,
not have been laughing
your
at that.
first
Hockey
year
held
as
us through. It's
president,
over.
that you
Tampa Bay
paid
just won the Stanley Cups. Now we got football
$750 a
going on.
year in federal
It's proof that
income
Democrats
tax
benefit
each of those years.
when everything is shut down because
I know
people
that
do
you
so badly
pay
they get on the
a
government
lot
dole
of
and
other
get dependent.
taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750
Oh, here we
in
go.
federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid
We have to talk about
millions
this
of
before the
dollars
next
in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers.
Show us your tax
I paid $38 million one year. I paid $27 million
Show us your tax
one year.
returns.
I went, you'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you wanted to, go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under leveraged because the assets are extremely good. And we have a very, I built a
Sir, I'm
great
asking you a
company.
specific question, which
But
is.
let me tell you.
I understand all of that.
Release your
I
tax
understand all of that.
returns. But let me-
No, Mr.
Go
President,
ahead.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
How about all the
Millions of
state and local
dollars.
taxes?
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions
How
of
about the
dollars.
alcohol
So not
taxes they
millions of
paid?
dollars.
And you get this. And you
How about the
get-
jobs that he
His
creates, the
FICA
payroll
his
taxes?
FICA taxes?
The payroll taxes. That's why this is
Tax
not a fair
laws.
question.
I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business.
What about
people.
Joe's,
Like
what about
every other
Joe's $7
private
million
person was,
home
they're
in Delaware?
stupid.
How did he get that
47 years as a
after
senator?
47 years as a senator?
He
How did he
passed a
afford a
tax
$7
bill
million
that
home?
gave
A
us
great
all these
book deal.
privileges
I think
for
they also
depreciation
missed.
and for
Joe borrowed it from
tax
Hunter.
credits like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired
no,
right after that happened, but
Vice
that's
President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I
That
do
poor guy
wanna
got fired.
I don't
The
know what to
tax
think about this
code
right now.
that made him put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher make on the money a school
There's an
teacher
entire
makes, is because
public
of
party
him he says
who
he's
wants to
smart
pay
because he
as
can
little
take
taxes as
advantage of the
possible.
tax code.
I mean,
And he does
I
take
don't want to give
advantage
the
of the tax
government
code. That's
more
why
money
I'm going to
in an
eliminate
effective
the
government.
Trump tax cuts.
He was
Well,
irresponsible
former vice
fiscally.
president,
And make sure
Well,
that we invest in the people who
Biden's
in
been in the
fact
Senate for
need the
47
help.
plus years
Yeah.
in politics.
People out
He helped
there
create the
need
current
help.
tax
But why
system.
didn't you do it
So
over 20, the last
And
25
when, and when Democrats say they're going to invest,
do it
that
over
means
You are
spend.
president screwing things up.
You were a senator. And
You're
by
the
way,
worst
we're
president
racist.
America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let
That's
me
why we have
just tell you,
trust.
Joe, I've done more in
or
in
good tax attorneys.
47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of doing,
Okay,
including
gentlemen.
fixing the broken
So I can tell you the
military
Trump
that you
people are
gave me.
polling on
Taking
this. American
care
people
of
do
your
not
family.
like
Ooh, he
life
just
and
brought
work
up
of
About the
professional
economy, I'd like
politicians.
to ask
Yeah.
you about
So he keeps
your
repeating
plans
that.
going
Smart.
forward, because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes.
Well, there is no economic
big
plan 'cause
spending.
it's gonna shut the
I wanna
economy
focus
down.
first
Get rid
on
of the salt
taxes.
tax.
You
deduction.
propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what is the analysis done by Wall Street firms. Points out that
which are all Democrats.
my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two,
This is where Trump
it would
should say,
create an
why would you listen to
additional
Wall
$1
Street? I thought you were
trillion
against
in
Wall
economic
Street.
growth, because it would be about buying
Harris is
America.
notably against
that
Wall
we
Street.
have to, we're going to make, this federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my
We started shipping
proposal,
jobs
we're going to
over
make
to
sure
China
that every
since the
penny
late
of that
70s when
has to
we
be
started
See,
made.
Joe,
having
why do we have to do
relations
that?
anyways, and it was
Respectfully, start
exacerbated
talking
over
about
decades and
taxes, not
decades.
spending.
This is
Well,
a
by the way,
non-new
I'm
problem
gonna
that
eliminate
now it's finally
significant
fighting
number of the
us.
tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, federal, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay
Here we
a
go.
single penny in
Joe
tax,
needs a break.
making billions of
Why
dollars.
didn't you do it?
He needs a rest. Nap time.
Because
Obama.
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was
Right.
your
I got
tax
it.
proposal.
I got it done. And you know what
Yeah,
happened?
you got it done.
Our economy boomed
And,
like it's never boomed.
The economy
Well,
is
Mr.
busted.
President,
Everybody got a
let me-
tax
let me-
cut.
Mr.
I don't know what
President,
he's
let me
talking
pick
about.
up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes,
God, I
more
hope so.
deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for American people.
Let me, but in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million
That's 'cause
more
they were
jobs
looking forward to
than in the
Obama
first
leaving.
3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up,
Joe
that means
loses
jobs.
on the
It also
economy
means
debate
401ks.
all day long.
And the
If
poll
you
reflects
run
it
in-
too.
If you
I
ever
mean,
became
you're
president
arguing
with
in the
your
dark room.
ideas, you want to terminate my tax?
He doesn't.
my
He's never
taxes,
been it
I'll tell
in
you
the
what,
private
you'll
sector.
lose
He
half
was
of the
senator at like
companies that have
32.
poured in here will leave.
Also,
And
once he
plenty of
ever
companies
retires,
that
if
are
he ever
already here,
does,
they'll
still
leave
has
for
that
other
nice
places.
federal
They
pension
will
he gets
leave
for
and
being
you
a
will have a
legislator.
depression the
And
likes
vice president.
of which
Oh,
you've
yeah.
never seen.
Look,
You get
we
free healthcare,
inherited
a lot of money.
the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
You also
So he
handed,
blew it.
Oh, that is just a low
y'all
blow.
also handed us
not
power
true.
back to the Middle East and
Is it
ISIS
fair to-
too.
Is
What
it fair to
else?
say he blew it when, in
When
fact, there was
COVID came.
when there was record low unemployment
Yeah.
before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even
Ooh,
before
Wallace
COVID,
is going
manufacturing
against
went in the
Biden.
hole.
Nice.
Manufacturing went.
Whoa. I thought Trump's gonna have an aneurysm.
They said it would take, no, you're.
Biden already had two.
Chris, they said it would
This
take
guy.
a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing.
We
Part
did
of
not
my
bring-
standard
They
fare.
exported
I'm
jobs
the
to
guy that
China.
talked
Say it,
about
Trump.
manufacturing.
All right, let him.
We brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them
Through a
back.
bailout.
Yeah, through a bailout.
Michigan. He
Also,
blew
they
it. They're
make better
gone.
cars.
He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best
Stop
year
playing-
it's ever had
making
last
gas
year.
guzzlers.
Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to
They're
Ohio.
not having.
And they didn't
Vice
come
I
Wait,
dream
wait,
of owning a
Mr. Vice President,
BMW one day.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. He talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit.
That's all
with
they can
China
do.
now.
Please,
It's
he's
the
got to hit him on
Rhetoric.
China.
highest
He's
deficit,
got
trade
to.
deficit.
China,
with
China's everyone's
Mexico.
problem. You guys allowed it for
Hold on.
8 years.
China ate your lunch, Joe, and
There it
no wonder
is. There
your
we go.
son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars, to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also,
Simply
while
not
we're at it,
true.
why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it?
That-
Oh, there we go. Finally.
Oh,
Pay to play, Joe.
None of that.
There's Russia.
None of that is true.
Oh, really? He didn't
Totally,
get
But no,
$3.5 million?
Mr. President,
it's
Mr.
totally,
President, please.
totally
Ask the question.
discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
Well, wait, he didn't get
No, no.
$3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice.
He got
Mr.
$3.5 million.
President,
that is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr.
Oh.
President.
But-
No.
It's
Oh,
an
really?
open
He didn't get it. I got it.
Now,
It's a fact.
Well,
There's-
you
there's
have
not.
raised an issue. Let the
But
Vice
totally
President answer.
discredited.
Did
There was a
Burisma pay him
report.
$183,000 a month
When-
with no experience in energy?
Mr.
Look,
President,
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he
and
did.
Mr.
the only guy
President,
that
let
did
him
something-
answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position is.
You can't handle the truth.
Disbelieved, and you
Great movie.
by everybody. Well, by the
By the
media,
media,
by our
because they refuse to
allies,
talk
by the
about it
World
because they're
Bank,
embarrassed.
by everyone has discredited. Matter of fact, even the people
President,
who
please stop.
testified under oath.
So let me
Under
ask you
oath.
this,
And
Joe.
they- under
No,
oath.
go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to
Even
you.
People under.
You got $3.5
He
million
testified-
from Moscow.
He
Let him to
testified
speak,
under oath in his
please.
administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh,
I did
really?
it
I'd like to know
honorably.
who they are.
Go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't do a
Well,
good
here's,
job. With you,
Go ahead.
they
You get
say-
the, wait a minute. You get the final word, Mr.
well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me, this.
Hey, let me just
Oh,
say,
No, Mr. President.
$3.5
Mr.
million,
President.
Joe.
That is simply.
Why did
not
he
true.
deserve $3.5 million
It
from
did-
Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about. I don't want to do that. I mean, his
I think
family, we can
most
talk
of
about all
Americans would
night.
really
His
drunk
family's
tonight.
already.
My family,
No, let him go.
my family
Already
lost
wrote.
a fortune by coming down and helping
Go
us
ahead.
with
Go ahead,
government.
sir.
And that's such a.
That's a fact.
such
That is true.
He came into government for the right
It's not
reason, and his
about
family is
my
losing a
family or his
fortune.
family, it's
They even
about
want to
your
sell the
family.
Trump hotel
The
because they're
American
not doing well because of all of
That's
the
not true. It
emoluments
doesn't want
clause
to talk
issues.
about what you need, you, the American people.
Okay.
It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
you should-
All right, that's the end of the segment. We're moving on.
It didn't take.
So I do have
Vice
to say, out of
President,
320
can I
million
be
people,
honest?
this
It
is
should
what
be
we
the
have.
end of the segment.
No,
He stood up.
No,
He stood up.
the answer to
and
the
he
question is
threatened
no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion, if you
That
get rid
is
of
you know what, you're-
absolutely not
Stop.
true.
tape doing it.
You're going to
Not
have,
tape.
True.
gentlemen,
Is-
I hate to
That should
raise
be
my
allowed to
voice,
get out.
but it's
I'm
to be-
sorry, that's
Why should I
important
be
stuff.
different than the two of you?
I
So
feel
here's the
bad.
deal.
Point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. You can ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more
Well,
interrupting
that's
than
all
he
right, but he does plenty.
Well, less than, sir, less
There's
than.
plenty.
No, less than you have. Let's please continue
Oh,
on.
come on. Now you're debating him, Chris.
Vice President
That's
Biden,
really
you say
crooked.
that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago.
Why are you bringing up 3
very
years
fine
ago?
People on both sides was what directly led you to launch this run for president. President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for Black Americans than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the two of you is, why should
Possible
voters
exception.
trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency.
What
It's
does equity
about the
mean?
Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging.
Here we go.
And just spewing
Those people are
anti-Semitic.
Joe
idiots.
Biden race
And
baiting.
accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed.
There we go.
And they asked the
Oh,
president
here
what
we
he thought.
go.
He said there were very fine people on both sides. No
That's right, Robert
president's
Byrd.
ever said anything like
Yeah,
that.
that was that senator, that longtime
Now,
senator, was
second-
a Grand Wizard or
second
whatever.
point I'd make to you
West
is
Virginia.
that when
And then wasn't Strum Thurmond who did the
Floyd was
filibuster
killed,
when
Mr.
Eisenhower
Floyd
trying
was
to push
killed.
through the civil rights
There
in
was
the
a peaceful
50s?
protest
Absolutely.
Democrats
outside the
killed
White
it, and then it came back
What
when
did
it
he
was
do?
politically
He came out
advantageous
of his
in
bunker,
the
had
60s.
the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The
Brad,
bishop
do
of that
admit
very
that was
church
pretty
said
bad
that it was a
publicity
disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle
President Trump
to
always
try
likes
to
to swing.
generate
He
racist,
doesn't know when
using-
not
he's
to
using
racist
stand.
division.
All the
This is a
Democrat
man
talking
who, in
points
fact, you talk about
about
helping
why
African
a
Americans.
Republican
One
Well,
in
going
doesn't
more
like
1,000
people who are
African
black, and
Americans
it's
has been
just so
killed
disgusting.
because of
It
the
is.
He said it to
coronavirus.
Romney.
And if he doesn't do
Romney's
something
putting people back
quickly,
in
by the end
chains.
of
Put
the
them back
year,
in chains.
1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is a savior of African Americans.
Sorry, how many
This
African
man
Americans are killed
cares
by
at
other
all.
African Americans
This man's
because they
done
have no
virtually
education,
nothing.
poor education, and no
The
job
fact is that
opportunities?
I
you
want
have to
Charlotte-
look at what he
Democrat
talks
cities
about.
run by
You have to
Democrats.
look at
I
what
want
he
Charlemagne the
did.
God to
What he
actually
did
maybe
has
like
been
run a debate. Like if
disastrous
Joe Rogan's going to do a
for the
debate, have
African
Charlemagne the
community.
God do it because
So-
Charlemagne the God
President Trump,
scorched
you have 2
Biden on
minutes.
his
Why
comments.
should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with
You did a
racism?
crime bill, 1994.
Oh, bringing that up.
Where you call them super predators, African Americans, the super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it,
That also
Jefferson.
got rid
Sir,
of
it's
college
just 2 minutes.
courses.
So you did
like
that,
most
and they
federal
call you
prisons
super
and places like
predator,
that.
and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why
How about school
if you
choice?
look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that. Because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place
He's
you
on a
want to
roll,
say,
This is really
they heard
effective
we were
line from
coming
him.
in the following day and they put up their hands and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities
And who's
are
affected the
run
most
by
by a lack
Democrats
of
and
law
in
and
many
order?
cases
Minority
radical
communities.
left, and they've got you wrapped
Also, you have
around
people
that
that
finger,
come from
Joe,
outside those
to a
communities that are
point where
being
you don't
affected
want to
from a
say
lot of things that
anything
we're already
about law
addressing
and order.
that do need
And
to be
I'll tell you
addressed
what,
in this country.
the people of
And
this
they're destroying
country
those communities that need
want
help
and
the most,
demand
which is
law and
sad.
order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the
Joe could have
Breonna
responded,
Taylor
but he didn't.
case
And
decided
that's-
not
that
to
shows a
charge
lot
any
right
of the
there.
police
Because he knows he
with
doesn't have any answer to
homicide.
that.
You said
Because
it
he
raises
can't.
the
If he
question,
says, I
quote,
support law
whether
enforcement, it is
justice
true.
could be
He will
equally
lose
applied
the
in
radical
America.
left.
Do you
And that's who
believe
is going to put him
that
in
there
office
is a
if he wins.
separate but
He also might have
unequal
another big
system
gaffe
of
that will really
justice
ruin
for
his
blacks in this
his
country?
chances even
Yes,
more.
there's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in
School
in law
choice.
enforcement and
Here comes the
and
school
way
choice
justice is
argument
enforced.
from
But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women.
Here's the line.
They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House. Well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out.
Caucus like
we're going
Obama.
to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd.
No
These
one does.
Cops aren't happy to see what
I
happened.
can't think of anybody who would
Taylor.
look at that and be like, that was a
Most
great
don't
thing.
like it.
George Floyd was murdered.
That was
have a
absurd,
system
yeah.
It is.
where
It's
people
a
are held
terrible thing.
accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right,
What is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town
President Trump-
and burn down your
President Trump-
stores and kill people all
President
over the
Trump,
place?
that
You
is
say
not
peaceful
peaceful.
protest.
President
No,
Trump,
it's
I'm not
not, but
asking-
you say it is.
President
not
Trump,
say
I'd like to continue with the
Yes,
issue
go
of
ahead,
race. I
please.
promise we're going to get
But
to
you
the
should
issue
talk
of
about the
law and order
protests, the
in a
fact that they're
moment.
not peaceful.
This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end
Because it's
racial
Marxist.
sensitivity training?
It's a Marxist
And
crap.
Do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical
Yeah, some of the things
revolution
that
that
make
was
you do in
taking
some of these
place in our
trainings, you hear about them on the
military.
news or whatever.
Yeah,
You
there are
have to
certain
say-
kind of wild,
you have
yeah.
to say that
all
you
over
have
the
white
place,
privilege.
and you know it,
in
and
these
so
training
does everybody
courses.
What
else,
is radical?
and he would know.
What is
Oh, it's
radical
totally
about
racist.
racial sensitivity training?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and frankly, very sick ideas. And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen.
That's well said.
We
They
have
were
to go
teaching
back
people to hate our
to the
country.
core values of this country. They were teaching
They're
people
destroying the
that our
government
country
from
is
the
a
inside.
horrible place. It's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country.
But Joey's looking
And
at
I'm
his
not going to allow that
advisors.
to
Look
happen.
at him,
Vice
you can
President
tell.
Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's just, he's
Oh, you're racist. You just don't.
here's the deal. I know a lot
You
more
see, he
about
just
it.
called,
Yeah,
Biden
let
just
him
called
finish.
Trump a racist. Unbelievable.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down
All
on
right,
so
we're all
many
humans
people.
in America
They look
here
down
and
their
just live by
nose
the
on
golden
people
rule.
like
It's that simple.
Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton.
True.
They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism
Vice
in America.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you go to many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened.
Oh,
Frankly, it was
local.
more violent than what I'm even seeing
That
now.
one hits close to home.
The reason
This
is
Yeah,
that
Baltimore
the
does hit close
Democrats
to
that
home.
run these cities
Ridiculous.
You should be
don't
talking
wanna
about
talk
school
like
choice,
you
too,
about
which is-
law and order.
Violent
You still
crime.
Yeah,
haven't
I think it's a
mentioned-
missed
Are you in
opportunity.
It
favor
is.
of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow
Are you in favor of law and order? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm in favor.
You asked a
Everybody's in favor
question,
of
let him finish.
law and order.
Loses
Law and
Let
order.
him, let him.
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration.
All right.
It's gone up on his watch.
Went down
He-
much more
he
in
had-
ours.
All right, we're down. You're,
President of
Mr.
the
President, you're going
United
to.
States. Someone please had fun.
Mr. President,
Every record
He
of
makes
Mr.
these
President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Doesn't grapple with context. It's like, oh,
Democratic-run cities.
That's
and
exactly my
violence
question.
is
There
up.
has been
Where
a
is it?
dramatic increase in
In
homicides
cities
in
run by
America
Democrats.
this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in
Because
fact,
they
there have
run
been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
Yes.
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York,
Well, some of
where
the
it's
strictest
going
gun
up like
control laws in
nobody's
the
ever
cities
seen anything,
in the
the numbers
country.
are going up 100, 150, 200%. crime.
Republic
It is
cities.
crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to
Chicago,
say
New
law
York
and
are
order
home.
because he
I
can't,
must have
because
missed
he'll
that one.
lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with.
And he
But
should be
if
talking
he ever
about school
got to run
choice
this
too, like,
country, and
why
they
are
ran
people
it the
not
way he
learning
would
in
want
this
to
city
run
so
it,
they feel
we
like
would
there's no
have
hope,
We would-
our
no
no
suburbs
opportunity?
would be
And failing
gone. By the
schools,
way,
like you've
our
asked for
Failing
money.
suburbs would be
schools, but
gone.
Trump, it's a
And
missed
you would see
opportunity, as Garrett
problems like
said.
He
you've
would
never
Not
know
talking
a
about that.
suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know
He
suburbs.
would not. I was raised,
Go ahead, wait a minute.
I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All
Buddy,
these
great.
dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being
There we
flooded.
go.
They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders
There it
task
is.
force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean?
It means
Let me
A simple
finish the
question would be
question. What does reimagining
training.
policing mean? And do you support the Black Lives Matter
Defund.
call for community control of policing?
look, what I support
Should've
is
said
defund.
having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding in his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement
Oh,
assistance. They
boy,
need
here
more
we go.
assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have
social
someone with them
worker.
as a psychologist or psychiatrist,
But-
to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down.
Problem
We
is, when
have
you
to
call
have
911 in
community
Democrat
like we had
cities,
before.
no one
The
responds.
officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down.
A few years ago, when we were
That's right. Sir, would you put
And
that
so
gun
we
down,
have to
please?
be-
I got the psychologist right here.
That's not what
That-
That's right. You're hurting my feelings. You're pointing a gun at
He
me.
doesn't have any law.
That's right.
He has no law enforcement.
A few years ago, there was a video of activists
Who do you
going
have?
doing
Name
training with
one
police
group
about
that
doing
supports
when to
you.
use
Name
force,
one group that
and
came out and
the guy
supported you.
instantly pulled out a gun when he got lunged at.
We have time.
We don't have time to do
No, no,
anything.
I'll give you a trophy if you give me your gun, sir.
Name one law enforcement group that came out and
I think,
supported
gentlemen,
you.
I think I'm going to take back the
There aren't.
moderator's
I don't
role,
think there
and
are any.
I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities
Oh, here we
that
go.
have
This should
turned
be good.
violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests,
Yep.
which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those
Hey, don't
turned
forget
into
CHOP.
riots. Mr. Vice President,
Chopper Chaz keeps
you
Chop
say
Chaz.
that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said,
Ooh, that's a
hey,
good question.
you've got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you'd stop the days and months of violence
And the
in
destruction
Portland?
of small businesses.
I don't hold public office now. I am
Oh,
made it clear.
What a
what a
comment.
loser.
Public statements.
You
that the
do still have
violence
influence.
should be
You're a former vice
prosecuted.
president
It should be
and a
prosecuted.
presidential
And anyone who
candidate.
commits it
But
should
you've
be
never called for the people, the leader, excuse me, sir.
How can I help you if I
never
get
called
elected?
For the leaders in Portland and in
It's like Trump,
Oregon to
Chris Wallace is
call
helping
bring
right
the
now. He
National
might not want to say
Guard
it.
and knock off
Yeah, it's
100
like
days
he's
of
hitting them
life.
hard.
They can,
But see,
in
this is why I
fact,
like Chris
take
Wallace.
care of
He
it if he
does
just
take
stay
shots
out
at
of the
everybody.
way. Look, here,
Oh, really?
Here.
Oh, really?
here's the
But
thing.
no,
I
that's,
sent
sir,
in
no, wait, I
the
asked a
US
question.
No,
Marshal
you
the
gotta stay
killer
out
of
of
a
this
young
one.
man in the middle of the street. They shot him. And for 3
Mr.
days,
President Trump,
Portland
President
wouldn't do
Trump,
anything.
they
I had to
interrupt-
send in the U.S. Marshals.
President
They took
Trump,
care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, his own former spokesperson said, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all
I
about.
don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said.
She said
He was
that.
an advisor.
And so here's the point.
Go
The
ahead.
point is that's what he is, keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do?
Oh, boy,
He just
yeah.
pours gasoline in the fire constantly, and every single solitary
Okay,
time.
and to end this, button up this segment. I'm going to give
Right.
you a
Excuse
minute
me,
to
sir, with a
answer,
Molotov
sir.
cocktail. Can we have a conversation?
I saw a video. It was trending on Twitter the other day. This guy turns a corner. He throws a Molotov cocktail right at like a group of
I'm
cops.
asking you
I would love to
now,
end it.
sir.
I would love to end it.
You know, if you want to switch seats,
We would very quickly.
We can do that, but
I'd
I'm
send
no,
in the
I'm-
National Guard.
Trump should have an opportunity to respond to this
I
question.
don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing
That's right.
extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw
Honestly, I
in
think they're all
Kenosha
crazy
and as
anyways.
we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared to
do that,
specifically
but
do it?
I
Go
would
ahead.
say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it,
Both
sir.
sides
Say
are
it.
conservative.
Say it. Do you want to call them? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name. Go
supremacists
ahead.
and
Who would
right
you like me to condemn?
white supremacists and right
Proud
Boys.
Boys, stand
Disavow
back and
them.
stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
The extreme right and the extreme left are both problematic.
White supremacists.
I wouldn't believe a word the
Antifa's an
FBI
idea,
says
not
right
an
now about any of
organization.
that.
You got it,
Not
kid.
malicious. That's what
It's an idea.
his FBI director
Gentlemen,
said.
Well,
we're
then
gonna-
you know what?
No, we're done,
We
sir.
do have to have
We're moving
everybody-
on to the next.
everybody-
When a bat hits you over the head, that's not an idea.
Everybody in
Antifa
your
is bad.
administration tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas.
Antifa is a dangerous
All right,
radical
gentlemen, we're
group.
now moving on to the Trump
And
and
you ought to be
Biden
careful with
records.
them. They'll overthrow you.
When a president, I'm going to ask a
Ooh,
question.
the records of
When
their
the president
past
seeks a
careers
second
should be good.
term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things.
Space Force, there it is.
The VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. He was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets, but we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully
Big sell right there.
great Supreme Court judges, justices. That is a record, the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I'll have so many judges? Because President Obama and him left me 128 judges to fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like, you just don't do that.
Shout out Mitch
They left
McConnell for holding it down in the
128
Senate.
openings, and if I were a
That
member
is a
of his
shout out.
party, because they have
They
a
got
little
enabled
different
to occur those
philosophy,
times.
I'd say if you left
I worship the
us
turtle.
128 openings, you can't be a good president. You can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you because it gives us it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term.
Fine, sir.
300 judges. It's a record.
Looking at both your records, why should
Here we go.
voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have
I thought you
thoughts
could have used that time a
uninterrupted.
little bit better.
Under this
Much better.
president, we
Trump
become
could have used
weaker,
that time much better.
sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I
Those
was
are good lines.
vice president,
Yeah,
we
that's
had
what I'm
a
saying.
recession.
Rehearsed
I
lines.
was asked to
But
fix
good
it.
lines.
I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused a recession. With regard to
He caused a recession.
the
I think
fact
the
is
pandemic
that I've
caused
gone
the
head to head
recession.
with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's
Except for the
puppy.
$3.5 million.
He refuses to even say anything.
Remember when
the
Clinton
bounty on
gave
heads of
Putin a
American
button?
soldiers.
It's spelled overcharged in Russian. It's like,
And by the way, my son.
Wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed
play fair,
to it.
man. That's true.
And why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word. Can you add back, sir?
Oh.
I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you
Go
add
ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yeah, yes, you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy.
Especially the ones in Silicon Valley.
Sounds like Bernie.
$400 billion more just since COVID.
Mm-hmm.
You in the home, you got less. You're in more
Yeah, that
trouble than
figures me
you
the
were
most.
before. In
Yeah, he's
terms
trying to
of
talk to the
being
American
more
viewers right
violent,
now.
when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided,
writing
the
checks
nation
he
it
can't
can't
cash.
stay
Then
divided.
why are
We
more
can't
liberals
be this
buying
way.
guns for the first
And
time
speaking
ever
of my
before?
son, the
Yeah,
way you
that's very
talk
true.
about the
You
military,
can't find ammo.
the way
You
you
can't find
talk about
anything.
them
People are
being
buying
losers and
double-barrel
being-
shotguns. That person would buy.
just being
I have a
suckers.
friend that
My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the,
Here we
he got
go.
the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot,
Oh.
and the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I resent.
Are you talking
like
about
hell.
Hunter? Are you talking
I'm
about Hunter?
talking about my son, Beau Biden. You're
Oh,
talking about.
I don't know, Bo. I know
Oh.
Hunter,
Yeah, you
Hunter
know, Bo.
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. He
for
wasn't dishonorably.
cocaine use, and he didn't have a job until you became vice president. And once you
None of
became
that
vice
is
president,
true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in
I don't
China,
know what this
in
does, though.
Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
He
My
made a
son,
fortune.
my son,
And he didn't have a
Oh,
job.
my son, like a lot of people we know at
This is
home,
devolving
had
even more
a
now.
drug problem. He's
That's actually a
overtaken
really
it.
good
He's,
answer.
he's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why was he
I'm proud of
given
my
tens
son.
of millions
All
of
right, but he
dollars?
wasn't given
All right,
tens of millions of dollars.
given
That
tens
is
of
totally,
millions of
that's
President Trump,
totally
President Trump,
discredited.
you've already been
Totally discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial
So do I.
subjects. Well, you know,
I agree, 'cause
as
I'm
the
getting really
moderator,
tired of
sir,
all this
I'm going to
bickering.
make
I know,
a
but when
judgment
somebody
call here.
gets $3.5 million
Okay, right.
from the
Let's
mayor
talk
of
about
Moscow,
Let's talk
That is
about
I
not
think
true.
it's a terrible
That
thing.
report is totally
Why did he get it?
discredited.
I
Mitt
think
Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money, that report. It was written for political reasons.
full-blown
I'd
mudslinging
like to talk
now.
about
Just
climate
Oh, yeah.
podcast listeners,
This is-
full-blown
this
mudslinging.
is a circus.
A lot of government initiatives and bills coming out of Capitol Hill are ways of government
displaced
our taxpayer
hundreds
money
of
anyway.
thousands
Damn right.
of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years,
Oh, it's
you
all
have
forestry.
pulled
Oh,
the
here we
US out
go.
of the Paris
Everything's
Climate
connected, though.
Accord.
Climate
Green New
change,
Deal.
Rolled back
power
a
grids,
number
it's
of
not
Obama
well maintained.
environmental
And building lots of
records.
houses in areas where
What
people
do you
probably weren't
believe
meant to
about the
live.
science of
Really
climate
arid
change?
places where you're
And
going to have
what will
fires
you
that have been
do
fires for
in the
many,
next
many
4
years.
years
And also-
to confront it?
I want
And they won't let them
crystal
timber it to
clean
thin it out.
water and air. I
Look
want
at-
beautiful,
And
clean air.
also
We
with
have
fires,
now
too,
the
you
same
have
problem.
floods. Everyone's
If you look
building
at
all
our
over the
numbers right
floodplains. All
now,
of a sudden, it's like, oh wait, the
we
water
are
can't go anywhere, so it's
doing
going to rush down and take
phenomenally.
out a city.
but I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very
Yeah, we're
happy about what's
bankrolling the whole
going
pro-
on.
whole
Because our
program.
businesses
Why would we
are doing
handicap
well. As far
ourselves
as
when
the
China and
fires are
India would
concerned,
reduce their
you need
carbon
forest
emissions anyways?
management in addition to
Exactly.
everything
Especially
else.
third world countries are
The
still building.
forest
They're going to go
floors
with
are
dirty,
loaded up
dirty
with trees,
powers.
dead trees that are years old, and they're
The
like
outcome of
tinder,
that,
and
CO2
leaves
wise,
and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole
Zero
forest
Just
burns
us
down.
paying
You've
billions
got
of
to have
dollars
forest
all these other
management.
countries.
Zero
What do you
emission
believe
technology
about
would
the
be great to
science of
implement.
climate
Technology's not
change?
there yet, or
I
it's not
believe
cost
that
effective
we
enough
have
to
to
actually
do
implement it on a
everything
large
we
scale
can
and
to
That's why
provide
we
the
need
energy
to
we need.
immaculate
innovate.
air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very
Do you
exciting. for a
believe
lot of
that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of
I
this
think a
planet?
lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. I think to an extent, yes. But I also think
We have to be
we have
stewards
to
of our
do
planet,
better
that's for
management
sure.
of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning, California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good
There it is.
forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they live their forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain
London's
their
technically
forests.
considered a
They
forest.
manage their forests.
So this is an
I
important
was
issue
with the
because
head of a
trees have a
major
lifespan.
country. It's a
And
forest city.
why would you
He
let a
said,
tree
"Sir,
fall
we
down?
have trees
Why would you
that
cut
are
the
far
tree
more,
and
they
use it for
ignite
lumber?
much easier
Because the tree has a
than
lifespan
California.
just like
There
human
shouldn't
beings,
be
and then
that
replant
problem.
a
I
tree.
spoke
Yeah,
with
what
the
they do in
governor.
But they won't
California,
allow
They
that
got
in
along very well
California.
Yeah,
with
what
the
they do in
governor.
California is
But
they
I
just
said, you know,
die,
at some
but
point,
they
you
they
can't
happen in all
every
these rugged
year
areas. They don't do any
hundreds of
effort to kind of
thousands
Well,
mitigate
so-
a lot of
Because the
these
greenies
circumstances.
think that you shouldn't be touching that at all.
On the
It has to be
greenies,
managed.
on the environmental side,
But sir, if you
that
believe
especially
in
if
the
they're
science
designated
of
wild
climate
wilderness
change,
zones,
why have you rolled back
leaving
the
like no human
Obama
impact. So if a tree falls
clean
down,
power
that's its
plan, which
natural
limited
course where it just
carbon
decomposes back
emissions
to
in
the earth
power
and
plants? Why
rejuvenates
have
the
you
area around
relaxed?
it.
Because it was
So
driving
there is
energy
an argument to
prices
leave
through
the
the sky.
Why
ecosystem
have you
alone
relaxed
like
fuel
so.
But then you see what happens in California, where it's every year. You know, something happens, and you have these
Well, yeah, people got-
absurd wildfires.
Because
Well, people
what's
got not
happening
like,
is
you
the
know,
car
do
is
gender
much
reveals
less
with explosives
expensive
in a
and it's
dry
a much
environment.
safer car. And you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen because of the cost of the car, you would have at
Not
least
to mention
double
electric
and
cars
triple
need
the
nickel
number of cars
and
purchased.
lithium.
We have
Rare
the
earth
old
minerals from
And
sludge
when
China,
you
too.
trucks that
when
are
you
10,
mine
12
for
years
those, you
old.
create
If you
enormous
did
amounts
that,
of
the car would
pollution.
be
And then
safer.
where do you put the
It would be
batteries
much
afterwards?
cheaper by
They're
the
toxic. It's all acid.
Exactly.
No, but you would take a lot of cars off the market because people would be able to afford a car.
The hydrogen power car is always
And by
interesting
the way, we're
because
going to
it's
see how that turns out.
emissions
But a lot of
water.
people agree with me. Many
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And,
Hey, if there's ever an EMP, we
I'm
can't use our
okay with
cars because they're
electric
all
cars
running on
too. I
computers
think
and
I'm all for
electronics.
electric cars. I've
Go back
given
to
big
the 60s when
incentives
it's
for
just
electric
straight up
cars.
mechanical.
You still
What
got to
they've done
power
in
the
California is
grid
just
to get the
crazy.
electric into your car. I
Vice
mean,
President Biden, I'd
nobody's
like
got
you
a
to
green
respond
Well,
sustainable
we're
to
building
the
energy
nuclear
plan.
reactors
president's
now, but it
climate
takes like 10,
change
15
record.
years
But I
to get
also want to
certified
ask
and
you
powered on, which
about
is
a
not
concern. You
really.
proposed $2 trillion in
California
green
just closed down
jobs.
two
You
of its.
talk about
It's
new
final
limits,
three
not
nuclear
abolishing,
reactors.
but new limits.
Yeah, how about
on
Solyndra?
fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says
noble goal, but
a
is that
lot of
effective?
these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two.
How about
if in
Pennsylvania
fact,
and Ohio,
when
West
during our
Virginia?
administration,
Oh,
the
you're a
Recovery
Scranton
Act,
boy,
I
Joe.
was
You
able
should
to
know.
was in
What
charge
about
able
all
to
that
bring down the
natural
cost
gas?
of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another
It's only cheaper because
coal-fired plant in
government is
America.
subsidizing
No one's
it.
going to build another
We could
oil-fired
almost
plant in
mimic
America.
France a little
They're
bit.
going to
They're all
move to
nuke,
renewable energy, number
hydro,
one.
and
Number two,
wind
we're
and
going to
solar.
make sure that we are able to
But
take the
nuke,
federal
nuclear.
fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future.
But to your point
We're
again, you
gonna
just brought up,
build
what do you do with
a
the batteries when it's
economy
end of
that, in
life? You
fact,
can't
is
dispose
going
of
to
it. Maybe
provide for
dispose them
the
in up the
ability
mountain
us to
for the
take
nuclear
4
waste that we were
million
supposed to send
buildings
to the
and
They
make
have
sure that they,
rolling
in fact, are
blackouts in
weatherized
California
in a
because
way
there's
that, in fact,
insufficient energy on the grid.
They'll
Isn't
emit
that akin to Venezuela a
significantly
little
less
bit there?
gas
Yes,
and
it's
oil
just like
because the heat
Venezuela.
will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs.
Venezuela's
We
oil
can get to
reserves
net zero in
extracted
terms
from
of
the ocean
energy
floor ever,
production
but,
by
you know, all
2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not
All
15
government
bucks an
jobs, by
hour,
the way, Joe.
but prevailing
It
wage.
takes taxpayer money to
by
retrain
having a
everybody,
new
too.
infrastructure that in
Millions
fact
of government
is
paid
green.
jobs,
And
really
the first
good
thing I
government
will
paid
do, I
jobs.
will rejoin the
But all
Paris
those new jobs
Accord.
eventually
I will
pay
join the
their
Paris
dividend,
Accord
basically.
because with
They
us
make,
out of it, look what's
turn to,
happening.
you know,
It's all
actual
falling
better
apart.
energy
And
and
talk
more money
about
for the
someone who
country.
has
I don't know.
no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More
I'm not
carbon
really
is absorbed in
so
that
happy about that
rainforest than
myself.
every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering.
Stop the
all
clear
for
cutting
it.
of the Brazilian rainforest might not be a bad idea.
Because that's the 51st state.
Yeah, that's actually not.
Stop.
What's the percentage of the Amazon rainforest?
And
Like,
if
it
you
contributes
don't,
like
then you're going to have
a large percentage of our
significant
oxygen in the
economic
in the globe.
consequences.
What about
pretty
the
crazy.
argument that President Trump basically says
That
that
comes to
you
the whole
have to
steward. We got to be
balance
stewards of our planet. So
environmental
our future
interests
generations
and
don't have to
economic
worry about
interests, and he's drawn
that
his
environment.
line.
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, makes sure that he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem.
Hell,
Methane.
Germany has
This is a guy who says that.
There it is.
you
They're
don't
coming
have
for
to
your
have
beef.
mileage
That's
standards
right.
for automobiles that exist now. This is a guy who says Well, the fact that
Contract Volkswagen.
They got concerns that
It's about
catalytic
the Green New
converters
Deal,
for cows.
and it's not 2 billion or 20 billion, as you said. It's $100
A catalytic
trillion.
converter.
I'm talking about.
Where they want to write down our buildings and rebuild the building.
No,
It's the
that is
dumbest,
not-
most
that
ridiculous.
So the second debate should be
Airplanes
interesting.
are out of business,
That's
where
If it
two-car
ever
systems
happens.
are out, where they
Not
want to
true.
take out the cows too.
Not-
There we go.
They want to take out the cows.
Oh my
This is a
God.
100 trillion. That's more money than our country could make. In
Hey, if I
100
bag 2 or 3
years.
deer in a
not
hunting
the
season,
case.
All right,
that's good enough for me for the rest of the year. I'm
Because
happy with that.
wait a minute, sir. I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy efficient
All with
homes.
government money, taxpayer money.
So the question becomes,
How expensive will those houses be for the cost of materials?
2 million
some
houses? That's like-
people
that seems like
support
nothing.
The president
Yeah.
would
Fuel now.
say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create
What's our national
thousands
debt?
and
26
millions of
trillion or
jobs.
close to
Good
that?
Thousands and millions. That is a very wide spectrum there.
The fact is, it's going to create millions of good paying jobs. And these tax incentives to people, for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of, it's going to make
That's
the
lip
economy
service.
much
Like when you
safer.
say
Look how
something like
much
that,
we're
you should
paying
have
now.
chance to
Basically
like,
central
more details.
planning.
With the deal with, by the way,
Soviet
he has an
central
answer for
planning.
hurricanes.
That
That's
worked
what they
so
want
well
to
in
do.
Russia and so well in China, where actually millions of people died. and
Cuba,
starved.
Venezuela.
Made it up.
Right, in Russia.
And here's the deal.
You make up a
Yep.
We're going to be in a position
That's a good
where
idea. Trump
we
should
can
address it with
create
Bernie.
hard, good jobs
say you're
by
just like
making
crazy
sure
Bernie.
the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars now, billions of dollars on floods, hurricanes, rising seas. We're in real trouble. Look what's happened just in the Midwest with these.
But if you're
storms that come
elected,
through and
you're so
wipe out
godlike, you're
entire
gonna stop all that.
Sections and
Yeah,
counties
right.
in Iowa.
Exactly.
They didn't
Exactly.
have it before,
Hurricanes,
but because of
you know,
global
the seas will
warming,
begin to
we
recede.
make up 15%
Very Obama-like,
of the
you know?
world's problem.
He's
We,
the
in
savior.
fact, but the rest of the world, we got to get
Hey,
them to come
they're only
along.
gonna
That's
probably be
what we have
around
to
on
get
this planet
back
for maybe another
into-
15, 20
back
years if they're
into
lucky.
The Paris
My generation has
All
to
right,
take
gentlemen,
the
wait a minute,
mess
So
they're leaving
why
us
didn't he
with.
do it for
You're right.
47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does, India does, they all do. We're supposed to
The
be good. And
developing
by the way,
world,
he
too,
made
they're
a
going to be
couple of
using dirty
statements.
fuel
The
to
Green
power
New
their
Deal
homes to
is
get into the
$100
modern
trillion.
age.
That is not
pretty
my
big yet.
plan.
That's
The Green
well, I
New
want to
Deal
rebuild every
is not
building.
my plan.
I want to
All
rebuild
right,
every
If you knew
have to-
anything
wait a minute,
about,
wait.
if you knew
Gentlemen,
He
anything
made a
about,
statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up,
Come
and
on,
then
Chris,
they
get a
went
hold
with it.
of
I
him,
never
this.
said it.
Okay.
that is
What
not
he
true.
did is
You're
he
done in
said
this segment.
he called
Mr.
the
Vice-
military
Mr. Vice President,
stupid bastards.
I
He
did
said
not
it on tape.
You just said that on live TV. Oh, man, the censors did not catch
The
that.
FCC violation there.
Mr. Vice President answered his final question.
Final question is, I can't remember which of all was ranting.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
Joe's looking a little
The
stressed now.
economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental changes will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward.
He just said he
Oh,
doesn't
my
support the
God.
Green New
Instead, in
Deal.
fact,
Wait, when will it pay for itself?
He literally
Support the
said
Green New Deal?
minutes ago he doesn't
Oh,
support.
wait, he just said it. Chris Wallace is. He just said he did. Chris Wallace called him out on it.
That means you just lost the radical left.
Oh, there we go.
Bingo.
Biden plan.
That was a faux pas
There
right
goes
there.
The
Pennsylvania,
Biden plan,
Ohio.
which is different than what he calls the radical
Never had West
Green New
Virginia.
Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment,
Oh, man.
election integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of
Yeah, I'm
Americans
concerned about this. This
are
is like the first
receiving
election where I'm actually concerned about the
mail-in
integrity
ballots
because
or
we have
Millions of
invested
Americans are voting,
I know.
especially Democrats,
Confident.
multiple times.
We
Should we
invested so
be
much in our
that this
voter
will
system,
be a fair
our
election?
tolling
And
systems
what are
to be
you
in person.
prepared to do?
We can't
all
really
on
secure the
mail.
mail. I'm not confident. And then
Plus
also you have
weeks,
both
because
sides
it'll
saying,
not only be
well, I don't
election
know.
day, but
We're going to
also
contest it. It's like, well,
counting
contest
some
it's going to take
ballots,
how many
mail-in
months
ballots
to
after
get to the
election
bottom of
day.
it and track
What are
all these
you
mail-in ballots?
prepared
Doesn't
to
make any
do
sense.
to reassure
Chain of
the
custody
American
of your
people
ballot
that
is
the
given to
next
someone
president
else.
will
Yeah,
be the legitimate
Make voting a
winner
national holiday so
of this
everyone has no
election?
excuse not to
In
vote in
this final
person.
segment, Mr. Vice
Institute
President, you go
COVID
first.
protocols to
Prepared to
be
let
socially
people
distanced
vote,
and
they
safe.
should go to
Simple as that.
iwillvote.com.
Not hard.
Decide how
Or
they're
allow
gonna
more
vote,
days. We already
when
have
they're
early
gonna
voting
vote,
days
and what
to be in
means by
person
which
anyway.
they're gonna
You already
vote.
have early voting.
His own
Exactly.
Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated
Unbelievable.
and cheating.
That is
They
the
said
talking
that.
point
The
of
fact
every
is that there are
professor
going
at
to be
every
millions of
radical
people because
university.
of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those
mean,
people who
That's
Not
because
on my
it's an
desk, but sent to
absentee
Jersey.
ballot.
will vote because enough poll watchers are there to make
He's not
sure they can
harvesting
socially
ballots, Joe.
distance.
He's just
The
mailing
polls
his
are open on
It's an absentee
time,
ballot.
and
Can you
their
imagine
polls
how
stay
the
open until
ballot
the votes
harvesting
are
for mail-in
counted.
ballots would have been
And
if
this
the
is
acorn
all
was still a
about trying
thing?
to dissuade
That would've
people
been
from
horrendous.
voting
Project Veritas would have
because
a
he's
field
trying
day.
to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will
Yeah, show up
determine
and
Where are
vote
you
in
supposed to
person.
vote, though? You guys have closed down all the polling sites.
If you're able to vote early in your
Yeah,
state,
talk to the American people.
if you're able
Yeah.
to vote in
There it
person,
is. There's
vote
the
in
Clinton
person,
thing.
vote
He was
whatever way
coached.
is the best way for you. Because you will.
Exactly.
He cannot stop you from being able
George
to determine the
Soros is
outcome of
cackling
this
somewhere in
election. And in terms
his
of whether or not
layer
when the
office.
votes
I
are
don't know what he
counted and
has.
they're all counted, that will be accepted.
Then why do you
If
have
I
so many
win,
lawyers,
that
Joe?
will be accepted. If I lose, that'll be
You have so
accepted.
many
But
lawyers
by the
that you're
way,
going to hire
if in
to
fact he
stop
says
people.
he's
Whole
not
Street on
sure what he's
retainer
going to
already.
accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote.
Hey,
Just make
Joe,
sure
you threatened to use the
understand
military to get him out of the
you
Oval
have it
Office,
in
which
your
is
control to
which is
determine
crazy.
what this country's going to look like the next
Honestly,
4
if the
years.
Democrats and the
Is
military
it
are going to be on their
change
side,
or
they're going to have a
4
rude
years of these
awakening.
lies?
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at
Someone's
all
gonna
of the
make an
different
electoral college
people,
comment soon.
there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying
exactly
on my
right. It was a
campaign.
coup.
They started from the day I won and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our first lady. They
And partly attributed
were a
to,
disaster. They were a disgrace
unfortunately,
to our
President Trump's
country.
weakness not
And we've
being
caught 'em.
articulate
We've caught
enough
'em all.
to not
We've got it
say
all on
very
tape.
kind of
We've caught
inflammatory
'em all.
things
By
that
the
even
way, you
kind
gave
of
the
raised
idea
my
for the
eyebrows
Logan
at.
Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's
That
a
was good.
disaster. A
That was very good.
solicited ballot.
They
Okay,
engaged in a coup
solicited is
d'etat.
okay.
Here's what you're talking
You're
about.
soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on
Get the
November 3rd.
CDC to work with
you're
the
watching
Election
and you see who won the
Commission
election.
to provide a
And I think we're gonna do
COVID-safe,
well because
in-person
people are
voting
really happy
system.
with
It's
the
not that
job
hard.
we've
We have
done.
plenty of time to
But you know
actually
what?
get
You
that.
can go
We might
shop
not-
at the
we might
grocery
not
store.
know for
You can
months
go vote in person.
because these
And
go to
ballots are
Walmart.
all
Go to
over.
restaurants
Take a
if your
look at
states
what
have allowed it and
happened in
opened up
Take a
with
look
low
at what
COVID
happened
positive
in
rates like
New
Maryland.
Jersey.
Like,
Take a look at
If
what
you can
happened in
riot, you can
Virginia and other
vote.
places.
Yeah.
They're
In
not
person.
losing 2%, 1%, which by the way is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That
So we won't
means
have
that's
results
7 days
immediately like
after
every other
the
election we've
election,
had
in theory,
in modern
should have been
times, at
announced.
least.
Okay.
We have major states with that,
Sir,
all run by
2 minutes is
Democrats.
2 minutes.
All run by
You're-
Democrats. It's
President
a,
Trump,
it's a rigged
I-
election.
you're going to be able to continue. You have been charging
Chris
for
is gonna
months
be
that
pouring
mail-in
himself a
balloting
stiff
is going to
drink
be
tonight
a
after this.
disaster. You
I would
say
be doing
it's
the same
rigged,
thing.
that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of
It shouldn't be the
mail-in
primary system.
ballots
It
have
should be
gone
just in
out,
case you can't actually
what are
get
you
to the
going to do
polls.
about it? And are you
Aside from
counting
COVID,
on the
I guess.
Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I don't think, well, I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so, because what's happening is incredible. I just heard, I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them, we don't like them, we don't like them.
But what are
They
you
throw
going to
them
do
out
about it?
left
If there
and
are
right.
Hey,
millions of
Chad.
ballots going out
What
right
you
now,
do
what
is
are
you
gonna
go
do?
and vote. You do a solicited ballot,
No,
and that's
I
okay,
know your
or you go and
complaint. I'm
vote.
asking you about the fact that millions of people.
You go
have
and
received-
vote. You go and
No,
vote,
but what
like
I'm saying is, what are
like
you
they
gonna do
used
about
to
the
in
fact
the
that
old.
millions of people?
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have
called an
mailmen
absentee
with
ballot.
lots of it. Did you see what's
Not a
going on? Take a
solicited
look at
ballot.
West
Once
Virginia,
again, it's,
mailmen selling the ballots.
That's
They're
amazing.
being
So I think
sold.
I understand
They're
his
being
point.
dumped
And
in
it makes
rivers.
sense. I mean, that's
This
how it
is a
should be done.
horrible
I mean,
thing for our
if
country.
you need an
This
absentee
is
ballot
not-
because of
this
COVID,
is
you should
not
get
going
one.
to
But other than
end.
that, otherwise,
He
you
should
should go in
refocus.
person.
This is not
He should also
going to
refocus on the
Five
fact
states
that they
had
engaged in a coup
mail-in
d'etat, and that's
for
why
the
he's
last
concerned about
decade
another
or
coup
more.
d'etat, but
Five,
through
including
ballot
two
votes.
So globally,
Republican
our
states.
adversaries, China
And
and
you
Russia,
don't
just
have to
licking their
solicit the
chops at
ballot.
this
It's
debate
sent
right
to
now.
you.
They're just
It's
loving
sent to your
this.
home. What we're saying is, they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by the time, by election day.
The
If
party
it
that's
doesn't
concerned
get in
about
until
Russia is the
7th,
party that
8th,
is Russia
9th,
right
it
now,
still
involved in
should
ballot
be
harvesting.
counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes. because
You're
of the
wrong.
outcome.
Well, Russia and China, they just
I
want
wanna
to
continue with you
confusion
on
this.
and
I'd love to
have
Vice President
weaken
Biden.
our
Chrissy,
resolve
so
and our
wrong.
faith in
We
our
make it happen.
institutions
Excuse me.
because our institutions are
Vice
so
President Biden,
against
the biggest problem,
how
in
they
fact,
run their
over the
countries.
years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some
But
other irregularity, or they missed the
governors
deadline. So the
and
question I have
legislatures
is,
are
are you
extending the ballot.
concerned
Pennsylvania said
the
that you don't have to
Supreme
have a
Court, Justice
postmark that
Barrett,
is easily read in
settle
order for
any
them to count the
dispute?
ballot.
And isn't that
concerned
ruling?
that any
Isn't
court will
the
settle this,
state
because
elections
here's the
run by the
deal.
Secretary of State?
When
Or
you,
like,
when
They're
you
run by the
file-
states.
When you get a ballot,
Elections
and you
are run
fill
by
it
the
out,
states.
you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you when before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and
You're
not
right. So Trump should be
dotting
talking
the
about
correct
voter
I.
ID.
Who they voted for.
He should be talking
testify,
about really simple
say who they
things, like
voted
what about
for,
voter ID? You need
say
voter
it's you.
ID
That
in
is
person.
totally legitimate.
All right.
use the
Excuse me,
Walmart
no,
When you
example.
have 80 million
Gentlemen, I have a
ballots,
final
Senate
question.
and swamping
Okay.
the system.
Let's get to
You
this.
know it can't be done. You know it can't. And
Oh.
already
All
there's
right.
been
So now,
fraud.
Mail service delivered.
Last question.
Gentlemen,
Let's go.
Final question is, in 8
ballots.
states, we can keep talking.
It's-
In 8 states, election workers are prohibited currently by law, 8 states, from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and
Yes.
flatten them until election day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a
I don't have
huge
a problem with
increase in mail-in
They already voted. They already
balloting,
voted. So
that
it's
we are not
process
going to
and hold
know
them in
on
a secure
election night who
repository
the
and
winner
then
is,
throw
that
the
it could
count
be
in at-
days, it
as soon
could
as
be
election day
weeks,
starts.
Could be months.
Day one.
until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest? And will you pledge
How can he?
tonight
They're already in the
that you will
street
not
raiting.
declare victory until the election has been
You already have people saying they're
independently
not going to accept
certified?
the results of the election,
President Trump,
regardless of either way it
His
goes.
supporters are already in the
To go
Biden
into
supporters are in the
polls
street
and
rioting.
watch very
It's
carefully,
too late to ask
because
for
that's
calm.
what
They won't
has
even
to
do it
happen.
now.
I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem in Philadelphia. They
Biden's
went in
not
to
elected, so he
watch.
can't ask
They're
his people.
called poll watchers. A very
Yeah,
safe, very
yeah,
nice
he's not
thing.
duly elected
They
official,
were
so he can't
thrown
do
out.
anything
They
about it.
weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia. Bad things. And I am urging.
Look at Biden. He
people. I
knows
hope
it
it's
too.
going to be a fair election.
That's
If
why
it's a
Hillary
fair
had her
election,
party
I
in
am
Philly
100%
in
on board.
2016,
But if I see
because that was where they were
tens
going
of
to steal the
thousands of
election in
ballots being
Pennsylvania.
manipulated,
That was going to seal the
I
deal
can't
for her.
go along with that.
And then
And I'll
everybody in
tell
the
you what,
countryside
common
voted
sense,
overwhelmingly
I'll
for
tell you
Trump
what,
people to take
and
the
overwhelmed the
fraudulent
electoral
election.
system.
And
Because
Hillary
Pennsylvania was going
80
to,
million
that Philadelphia was
ballots.
going to
They're
cheat
not
him
equipped to-
upon.
And Clinton
These
took
people
the
aren't
Rust Belt
equipped to
for
handle it.
granted and didn't
Number
really
one.
campaign
Number
anywhere.
two,
Where Trump
they
campaigned
cheat.
everywhere.
Couldn't point out Wisconsin
Hey,
on a map.
they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
You think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted? And will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes, and here's the deal. They count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until election day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military,
I agree.
they've been voting by ballots since at the end of the Civil War in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why was it not? Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots. That somehow it's a fraudulent process.
We haven't
already
done
been
this large
established.
scale where.
Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's
I
race.
have
They're literally
an
people.
opportunity
Look
to
at
respond.
Carolyn Monroe.
Go ahead.
They have no idea what
Vice
happened.
President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I
Sometimes
will
I think
accept
both of
it,
you
and
don't
he
know what
will
you're
too.
talking
You know
about.
why? Because once the winner is declared, after all the
Every
ballots
Democrat
are counted,
state
all the
that's
votes
run
are
by
counted,
a
that'll be the
Democrat
end of it.
governor,
That'll be the end of it.
they have
And if it's
extended
me,
the
in fact,
acceptance
fine.
of
If it's
ballots
not me,
post-election.
I'll support the outcome.
So
And I'll
ballots
be
are
a
still
president,
being
not
mailed
just for
in.
the
They're still accepting those ballots
Democrats. I'll
after
be
the
a
election
president for
day is over.
Democrats and
And then they're
Republicans.
counting them.
And
Would their
this
argument
guy,
be because
I
of
wanna
the
say
USPS
Gentlemen,
We
you know,
say
story that's
the
going
end of
out?
this.
To, oh, they,
This is
you
the
know,
end of debate.
slow in delivery and stuff
We're
like
not going
that.
to leave it there. To be continued as
There we go.
as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, has been an interesting hour and a half. I want to thank you both for
Someone's
participating
getting a drink
in the
later.
first of 3 debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic for hosting this event. The next debate, sponsored by the Commission.
So they're ending the debate,
I agree.
correct? Yeah, so they're ending the debate, and basically what we have here is the first debate is over. Chris Wallace is intervening, obviously ending it right there. What are your thoughts post-debate?
What a circus.
Who won?
Who won? Who the hell knows?
Yeah, exactly. This devolved bad. There were some good points on both sides.
Yeah.
It's craziness.
Trump, it's definitely interrupted too much.
Trump
Yeah.
definitely
Seemed too
interrupted.
eager.
I thought
seemed
he
too eager.
missed a lot of golden opportunities to hit on a lot of hot button issues that really do pull well. I mean, you know, when
Will
they
they
basically
shake
gave him
hands
2
or-
minutes.
Do something cordial.
So, yeah, but Trump interrupted way too much,
Yes, he
I
did.
think, and he seemed too eager to interrupt. And he also seemed, to me, he seemed a little disheveled in this particular debate.
So here's
And
what I
Biden,
think
of
is the
course,
embodiment
wasn't
of it.
showing very much emotion.
They gave Trump 2 minutes to basically say whatever he wanted. There was that time where they're like, you know, why should you get another 4 years? And Trump was just saying, he didn't say anything. Like, he just was like, you know, I've done a lot for everybody. And it's like, give me, you know, you got to hammer the economy. You got to hammer jobs. You got to hammer that you're the best person to lead the recovery after coronavirus. You got to say, you know, Joe Biden is the reason, or Joe Biden's policies will continue to have a lot of these issues that are affecting middle America.
So here's what I think. Look, I think that the pandemic is one of those issues that really has hurt Donald Trump, and the Democrats know that. So that was the first question out of the box by Chris Wallace. And in my opinion, basically what I saw Biden do, I saw Biden flip-flop. He said he should have closed the economy. And then he says too many businesses are being hurt by the economy being closed, Biden. And then he flip-flops again and says, well, you know, if I'm elected, then I'm going to make sure the economy is closed, and therefore no people will die and everybody will be fine.
But also, I care about small business. Don't
But I
forget
care about
that.
small business. I think that hurt Biden because it did not come off as genuine, because you can't have it both ways. You
Only
really
time
can't.
will tell from moving forward.
I really do think,
Exactly.
though, a lot of this is like, are you a coastal
Yeah.
or are you middle America? Because, I mean, if you look at a lot of these answers, you know, there's things that Trump says that Biden just scoffs at and laughs off as being kind of a useless thing to discuss. But they really do resonate with key voters in key swing states. I mean, this election is again going to come down to Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, you know, and a couple other swing states
And
that
maybe
are in
Minnesota.
there. And maybe Minnesota, you know, and if you can try and expand the map. And I think Trump did a good job, and the answers that I thought were really good was hitting on a lot of those middle American issues.
Yeah. So here's my question. How about the issue of Trump talking about Hunter Biden? Because that was going on nonstop. He kept interrupting and talking about Hunter Biden and the fact that Hunter Biden was dishonorably discharged from the United States military. And that Hunter Biden took $3.5 million from Russia. That Hunter Biden was involved in Burisma on the board. That Hunter Biden, of course, did work in China, is getting paid. Did that resonate?
Only time will tell.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but did it? But do you think did it resonate with you?
I could care less. I want to know who's going to be president.
So I will say, speaking of the Hunter Biden thing, I don't know who it helps. It doesn't really resonate with me because, you know, it seems like general political dealing, like insider dealing with how just shitty politicians act over the course of their time in office. I mean, if that's a revelation to anybody.
How about Trump talking about, Joe, you've been in for 47 years.
That I think that resonates a lot.
Yeah,
I mean,
you could have gotten it done for 47 years and you didn't get it done.
And he didn't. No, I mean, exactly. Plus, he was vice president for 8 years. Which I always find it's funny because it's like any time there was something that ever needed to be done, Biden was like, well, I was the guy who was sent to do it. Whereas
Well, how about when Biden looks in the camera and he says, you know, you're the one that's going to vote and you're going to decide. He's looking in the camera and so forth. Was that effective? So the handlers definitely told him to do it. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah.
Did it help him?
I really, directly appealing to the American people, I don't think it really helps. I don't think this debate will move the needle in any direction.
Yep, that's what I think too. Final thoughts on this, Ryan?
As I said, time will only tell, and honestly, it devolved. Chris Wallace did the best job he could have. I liked how he took shots at both people where they had to actually answer really hard questions, and I want to see what happens in the next debate.
Got it. And that's it for Mark and the Millennials. And I want to thank our Millennials, of course, Ryan the Squirrel Brady and Garrick Ross. And I'm Mark Fisher. That's it for Mark and the Millennials. I also want to thank Adam Couture, our producer, and Chris Hopkins,